Good morning. It is Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. This is the Story County Board of Supervisors meeting. Welcome back to folks that are in the public meeting room. We are back to no longer having the limitations within our public meeting room, but also are continuing to provide access via Zoom because I do think it's been beneficial to have additional participation with access via Zoom. With that, I will call the meeting to order and ask that please stand if you're able and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with that, is there a motion to adopt today's agenda?
Move adoption of today's agenda.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Basil?
Aye.
Merkin? Aye. Heddens? Aye. Next we'll move on to public comment number 1. This is the comment period is for the public to address topics on today's agenda. If there's anyone who would like to make public comment, you please raise your hand if you're on via Zoom or hit *9. It looks like there might be something in the Q&A box, or if you're in the meeting room, you can come up to the front table.
Just can you tell a story time Jane Underhill is on?
Is that Jane at Jane 2131?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yes, it looks like, okay. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment number 1, and we'll go on to agency reports. We have the Storytime Child Care Center annual report with Jane Underhill.
Yep. Am I on?
Good morning, Jane.
Hi. I didn't know if I was working or not. I'm Jane from Storytime Child Care in Maxwell. We provide infant care, full-time care, preschool, and before and after school care to families in Maxwell, Collins, and the surrounding area. Storytime's licensed for 42 kids. When the pandemic started, we were down to 6 in March of 2020. And we closed from March to May 18th of 2020 due to parents working from home and parents just not wanting their kids around other kids. By July of 20, we were back to 16, and as of June 2021, we're back up to full capacity. We have, well, I should say we have 38, and it can take 42 kids. So we're doing great right now. To help things going during the pandemic, I had applied for the payroll protection program and received $47,400 from that, and we received a $6,000 DHS stipend. And this summer we're doing great. We've survived this past year, and the families I have are great. My employees are doing awesome throughout this whole thing, and back on the road to recovery, and things are going well.
Great. Supervisors, any questions? I think the only question I have, Jane, is the families that have re-enrolled, that you were down. Is it the same families, or did you get some different families? Did some say, oh, we're just keeping our kids at home, but you gained some other new families?
We gained probably at least 12 new families. A lot of the kids that were school agers, the parents decided to just keep them home, and a lot of them are still working from home. So it's worked out good because we have more babies and full-time kids now. And, so the school agers have moved on, and we've brought in the babies, which last up and through the school for us. So it's worked out well.
Great. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of new families move into the community.
I don't have any other questions. I just thank you for all that you've done. I'm glad that you were able to make it through this past year. I know it was a challenge for all of us, and
yes.
provide this vital service for the folks, the community.
Thank you guys for everything you've done for us. Means a lot to Storytime.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll move on to consideration of claims, or excuse me, consideration of minutes.
I move adoption of minutes of the meetings of 5:25 and 6:1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Merkin,
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Heddens, aye. Next, we have consideration of personnel actions.
Move approval of personnel actions as presented.
It's
Second.
been moved and seconded. Basil.
Aye.
Merkin,
Aye.
Heddens, aye. Now we have consideration of claims.
I move approval of claims as listed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Merkin,
Aye.
Basil,
Aye.
Heddens, aye. Next, we're up to consent agenda. Is anyone pulling anything from the consent agenda today? No? Okay, then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Basil,
Aye.
Merkin,
Aye.
Heddens, aye. Now it looks like we are down to the public hearing. The second consideration for ordinance number 294, the minimum requirements for tanning facilities. If you recall from last week's, this ordinance was adopting the Iowa Code by reference, and then includes the provision of banning under the age of 16, and then with parental consent 16 through 17 is for the tanning ordinance. How would you like? Would you like to have discussion first on the second reading, or should I open it up to the public? Would you like to hear from the public first?
Admin discussions.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. We'll open it up to the public. If anyone from the public has any comments they would like to make in regards to the second reading of ordinance number 294. And you just raise your hand or hit *9. Or if you're in the meeting room, you can come up and make comment. And I'm not seeing anyone here to make comment. Okay. We will close the public hearing then. Any additional comments you would like to make? I'll just make a comment that I did receive an email from, I think how he pronounces his name is Dr. McAlpine, that he was again reiterating that he was hoping that the supervisors would consider the ban of under 18, so to the age of 18. Also, Dr. Christensen had contacted me, and she had said from a health standpoint, that is what the Medical Society, the Cancer Society have all been looking at, is the under 18 banning. She did say that they've had a number of clients that they're seeing, or patients that they're seeing that are in their 20s that are have some form of skin cancer, and again really wants to look at this, kind of the stronger proposal. The concern is if you kind of settle, you're not going to get anything stronger later, and that's their concern. We'll see an increased number of people with skin cancers, and it could be preventable. When you're talking about melanoma, if it's not identified early enough, it's in the later stage, it is deadly, and that they would prefer with the 18 and under 18. 18 is the age of majority. So I wanted to relay that along since I contacted.
Did either of them have anything to say about supervised versus unsupervised tanning?
They said that really they have not seen a difference because of the unsupervised, or are you referring to the parental consent?
Tanning in a tanning salon versus people just tanning on their own with some bulb they pick up someplace and.
Yes, from I believe what Dr. Christensen said when I spoke with her is they don't see that there's going to be, that you're going to see like a drive to folks going to the using the unregulated. If they're going to do that, they're already going to do that. Right now, individuals that are going tanning right now, oftentimes they are going with a parent to go tan. So the idea of saying parental consent, they're not they're not optimistic that's gonna make a difference because they've already are seeing that, gosh, they went tanning, you know, I went tanning with my mom, or my dad took me, you know, to the salon or whatever. So they are not seeing that. That's why they're really pushing for the change. The number of others statewide that have done the under 18 ban is where they're coming from as well. And again, their concern is, especially since there's one county in the state that does have the ban under 16, parent approvals for 16 and 17. If Story County does the same, does that then get picked up statewide, and they're not going to get anything stronger? And they firmly believe from a health standpoint that it should be banned under 18.
Well, did you have any other questions? Okay, I think there's good arguments either way. I see this as being a step forward, so I will move approval of ordinance 294 on second consideration and waiving third consideration.
I would second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Merkin?
Aye.
Basil?
Aye.
Evans? No. Moving on to additional items. We have discussion and consideration of extending one overstaffed full-time employee position. Connie Forstall.
First, the sheriff cannot be here because he is sitting on an interview panel for the chief of police for the city of Ames. So he extends his apologies.
So you're just looking at extending one full-time staff, so you'd be over in one particular area.
Yes, and that would be, and for this particular thing, it would be in the jail.
Okay.
For detention officer.
Any questions?
This is not new. You're just asking for it to continue.
To continue until December 31st.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
I would move approval of extending one overstaffed full-time employee position to December 31, 2021 for the sheriff's office.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Basil?
Aye.
Merkin?
Aye.
Evans? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And it's nice to see you in person.
Yeah. Next, we have discussion and consideration of action on construction and demolition landfill work program item. Good morning, Amelia.
Good morning. This is an item related to our department's work program for 2021. We have other options beyond purchasing a site. We talked about at our annual work program meeting, incorporating this need in the space study, reaching out to other county departments. But I certainly wanted to get going on this aspect of it. It was suggested we reach out to private property owners to see if anyone would be willing to sell the county a portion of their land to use for this purpose. We anticipate it'll be about 80 to 100 letters that go out based on our siting requirements. We tried to do something similar, but rent property a few years ago, and we had two folks that were interested, but neither worked out in the end. So we think that purchasing property would be the better option, especially in terms of, cleaning up and using for other purposes, such as, keeping it in CRP or some other beneficial use for the county when it's not being used for a temporary C&D site. So I'm happy to take any questions or additions to the letter, changes. If you'd like the letter to come from you all instead of me. And our Planning and Zoning Commission also reviewed this letter.
Okay, and they're all for it?
Yes.
Okay. After our experience last August with the derecho and that debris and people just starting to throw stuff in the ditches and the right of ways and having to quickly get a place and paying a good price for it, quite frankly. When you look at, and the owner there, all he wanted was brush. we can just look to the east of us to Marshall County and what happened to them with the tornado, look at other places and realize that we really need, when we have the need, unfortunately, sometimes it's gonna be for more than just brush. And it's gonna be for stuff that people don't want put on land that they're gonna be, having back. I wouldn't. So I think just because of an economic standpoint, because of a standpoint of needing to move quickly, if there's a tornado or some other disaster, I'm really thinking this is the way the county should go. So I'm glad you brought this up and put it together. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary of the concerns we've heard from people when we reached out about leasing property too, that they don't want other types of debris besides vegetative. So this would expand options if there was a larger scale disaster.
And it would be temporary. It's not a landfill. It's just temporary until we can dispose of it in an environmentally sound way. But you've got to have some place to bring stuff
Yeah.
away, or just your storm recovery is slow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And bad things happen.
Yeah, and then next steps after sending this letter, if that we have interest, we'd of course do site visits and vet the site, and bring back any options to you, and, we could discuss price at that point too, but this is really just an introductory, is there interest, can you come out and look at your site? And we look for things, are there any potential cemeteries or, other concerns on the property that we don't want to move forward with, so. Really just an introductory, are you interested letter?
20 acres is a lot of land.
Yeah, the site we rented was 10. 10 for the derecho.
Did we run out of space?
No, but it did provide a pretty good size, especially because we were able to split it up by secondary roads debris pile and the public debris pile. And so there was enough room in between for maneuvering of larger trucks.
And I suppose that you want to get larger trucks in, you want to get some good turnaround space, and you probably also, as much as possible, want to say, white stuff goes over here, this kind of
Yes.
stuff goes here.
Yep,
'Cause that just makes it
separation,
easier, separation.
absolutely, yeah. And so that number was based on a calculation we did looking at some of our more densely populated areas and different scales of disaster. FEMA puts out a formula to use to look at, we have this many houses, they're this big, this is how dense the vegetation is in the area, and that's how we arrived at this number. We looked at Fernald and some of the larger subdivisions.
So would it be available to cities?
That's a good question.
Because I doubt that all cities have,
Yeah,
particularly the smaller areas have space for that.
Yeah.
They have debris piles, I know, just for brush, but do they have a need, would they have a need to participate in this?
yeah, I think, Maxwell has a brush site. I Nevada uses their site at their current wastewater treatment plant, and then we'll be using a site at their new wastewater treatment plant. I know that that's their plan, but we could certainly, that's something to look at in terms of a 2080. That was an option the county pursued at one point too, doing a 2080 with the city for one of their sites. It didn't work out due to floodplain concerns. I'll write that down.
To me, CRP is a good use. You need to check with NRCS to see, can you suspend, let's say you get a 10-year contract, can you suspend a year if you're actively using the site for something else, and then what would be your responsibility of restoring it? But it would be a good way to get income off the site and a good environmental thing to do. So I could see CRP being just right, if they can deal with the fact that we might have to suspend the contract if we have, if the disaster happens.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good way of doing it.
That's a great point. I think what we're gonna come to is most of these properties are gonna be in row crop production right now.
Yeah.
That's just what qualifies.
Sure.
And
So that'd be a good,
if we run that for row crop, then we'd have income,
yeah,
but income either way.
that's an option too.
That's an issue, yeah.
So, I'm just looking for direction to send a letter.
I can't think of anything. I think it looks fine.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that looks fine. I think it's fine that it comes from you.
Great,
Yeah.
we'll get it out.
What?
It's like
it's a consideration, so we need a motion.
Okay, whose turn is it?
Yours.
Okay, I'll do it then. I move that we approve planning and development sending out a letter for seeking land to buy for construction and demolition landfill work. Landfill.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Merkin,
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Evans, aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have discussion and consideration of grant, like, is it Lemire, I'm sorry, site development plan.
Andrea's gonna do this one. Thank you, Leanne. You're on it.
So we received a site plan for the new warehousing facility. I don't know if you can see it really well in the PowerPoint, but it's at 5615 Lincoln Highway, so it is in that image near that corner of 550th and Lincoln Highway, or 500, sorry, County Line Road. Formerly was a mobile home park. Property owner, Mr. Lemire, would like to transition it to a storage facility. There are no mobile homes on the site at this time. The proposal includes using prefabricated shipping containers sited where the mobile home sat to be used for storage. Slide, please. There would be hoop buildings at the northern end of the property, so the hoop attached to two different shipping containers to create storage for recreational vehicles, campers, boats, and the like. The shipping containers, there's a smaller unit and a larger unit, so 8 feet by 40 feet would be the larger size, and then 8 feet by 20 feet would be the smaller one. And again, those would be placed where the mobile homes would be, had been. So, as few trees as possible taken out, if they were dead or sick, and just kind of siting these as they're able to on the property as it is. Let me go to the next slide. This is the site plan. It's a little bit difficult to see not in full screen, but the pink areas would be where the shipping containers would be sited. There's quite a bit of green space left intact on the site. Nothing is being sited on where the septic mound is. And then in blue on that site plan is where there are existing drives on this particular property. So in pink would be where storage containers would be. On the next slide. So we do have an unresolved access issue. Review the site plan, see that met our development guidelines in the code, and in section 88.04, we do require an access easement when a lot has frontage, but it cannot meet the siting requirements for a driveway. We asked the property owner and the applicant if they had a recorded access easement, and they submitted a real estate contract that was included on the agenda dated to 1959. And they say is a recorded access easement. We passed this document on to Ethan, the county attorney, for his opinion on it, as well as the question of if they have a prescriptive easement rights. His opinion is that they do not currently have legal access to the property based on that 1959 document, and he does not believe that they have a prescriptive easement at this point in time. Next slide, please. So we suggested, one option. The city of Ames controls that section of road right-of-way off Lincoln Highway. We suggested to the applicant and the property owner that they apply for an access permit for the city of Ames. You can kind of see in that image the proposed access point would kind of adjoin what is the current access there off Lincoln Highway. We'd be modifying the road right of way in that little blue section there so that they could be not on the adjacent property owner's property in order to get to the storage facility. Because to our knowledge, there isn't an access easement with the current property owner to use that drive. The city of Ames said that in an email to the property owner, to the applicant, and to us, that they would like them to exhaust other options for access, which would be seeking an access easement with the adjoining property owner or acquiring a court order that grants them prescriptive rights to use that private drive. There's a quote there from the city of Ames. If that was exhausted, they couldn't get an easement, couldn't get prescriptive rights, then the city would consider an access permit with some conditions, and they would want that recorded with them and their attorneys. Next slide, please. So our recommendation, since it does not meet all our requirements in the land development regulations, would be that the board deny the site plan as it is currently. If denied, the applicant can continue to pursue a 50-foot wide written recorded access easement with the adjacent property owner, or could seek restricted easement. We have a few alternatives on the next slide, I believe. So alternatives for the Board of Supervisors, you could approve the site development plan as it was submitted. You could approve it with conditions. We do have a few conditions that we've gone over with the applicant and the property owner already. You can choose that option. We can talk about those further. Our recommended alternative is highlighted in bold. Would it be denied as submitted? Or you all could remand the site plan back to the applicant for further review or modifications and direct us to put this on a future Board of Supervisors agenda. If you have any questions, I'm going to take those.
I would just note that we did also send you all a letter we received from the applicant yesterday afternoon. I did also route that to Ethan Anderson, County Attorney, and he has no further concerns or comments.
So I guess my one question, when you say Ethan has no further concerns, does he still have the same, that it doesn't meet the easement
Yes.
requirement?
Yes,
Okay, so the letter doesn't, I mean, I read through the letter, it didn't
it does not change.
provide any additional information that
Yes.
changed that opinion. Okay, that
Yes.
was the.
Any other questions for us? I think the applicant property owner here, if you'd like, they can come up and speak.
Sure, we can have the applicant up by mic. Do you have any questions at this particular
No,
time, or?
this time.
I might after hearing from the applicant.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Scott Reynolds for the applicant. The applicant, Grant Lamar, is here as well. So, essentially a letter, because I kind of wanted to outline and let you think about it a little bit of this access easement. So really, in my mind, what happened here is the county chose sides, for lack of a better term. The code section that this refers, that the easement is under 564 of the Iowa Code. And it's actually set up in a way to get unrecorded easements recorded at some point in time. It's also kind of a reciprocal thing. In other words, if the one property owner doesn't want this access, there's a process under that same code section to deny it. There's also a way to enforce it. And that's what Ethan is asking for, is to do this recorded part, which we provided you with plenty of evidence that exists. A written easement that's maybe not in the form that Ethan would like, but certainly suffices as that, plus just history. Since the late 1950s, this has been used. That's why I provided a site plan page that showed the trailers that were in there, but previously you can see there was a large amount of traffic that used that site via that. So, but what we have here is an element of time. There's a limited time for him to be able to make some productive use of his property before it's annexed in the city of Ames. He's a non-consenting part of the annexation. He's not consenting. There's some reasons for him not to be consenting from a standpoint of dealing with the city of Ames. But he's not resisting the annexation. He just would like to be able to make productive use of his property before the annexation is complete. So he has a very limited amount of time. So there is no doubt in my mind that we can get to where Ethan would like us to be, but it's just an element of time. And by that time, he's not going to be able to make productive use of his property. So what I'm showing you is a couple things. First of all, I believe we already have the easement. There's history that's there. There's a code section that really allows for us to get that access. And there is no doubt that we're going to get that if we needed it. And the reason being is you cannot isolate a property. One property owner cannot turn around and isolate another property no matter what the obstruction is. There's one that's, if you were on the other side of the stream, and you can't make some difficult path to get there. Now what we've done is, let's assume worst case scenario is that we don't get our prescriptive easement and we have nothing. And then, so what we showed on the site plan and what we'd like to do is have a legal drive that connects to the same access point that there is now. We have a very low volume situation here for traffic. We have, and it's a legally conforming access point. SUDAS allows for frontage roads essentially, so we have is a very short frontage road in essence, as long as we're 40 foot away from the existing traveled way. As this gets annexed and developed and the plans become firm, there's going to be a lot of movement in give and take between the different property owners and whatnot. And we'll have a little bit better idea of what we're doing here. But again, time is of the essence here. If he doesn't, if he isn't able to develop a site plan, then he's not going to make productive use of his property. If he cannot make productive use of his property, then my advice to him is to go to the City Development Board and seek a delay in the annexation until he can get all these issues resolved. And I don't think that's in the benefit of the city or the other property owner, because we're not trying to be, Mr. Lamar is not trying to be contrary, but he is trying to cooperate, but he does have some of his own property interests that he has to look after. With that, I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
So why is there a rush to do this before the annexation?
Because under the expected zoning that's going to come once it goes into the city of Ames, it's going to be agricultural zone.
Okay.
So, and then the zoning of the city will control the development of the parcel. So he will not, if he has 10 storage units done by the time the annexation, that's all he's going to have. He will be unlikely to be able to proceed with getting more.
Because this would be a non-conforming use.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. We're also anticipating that as time goes on, that the zones that are talked about in the city's land use plan will not allow storage will not allow storage in this area. So what we're looking at here is a use, what Mr. Lamar is trying to do is a transitional use, something that's very easy to undo at a future time when he's able to develop his property.
In the meantime, it'll be a non-conforming.
Right, yeah, if he gets 10
parcel.
units done before the annexation occurs, that's all he's gonna have. If he gets 40 units done, we do have a number in the site plan that specifies the maximum number that we can have. And once that's done, then he's just done on whatever date the annexation occurs.
I'm not, excuse me, I'm not sure if this would be a question for you or Amelia or a little bit of both, but I think there was information that had been provided that the city stated that they couldn't get access to the permit till what else was exhausted. Can you talk on that a little bit further?
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Yes. So when we did our review of this site plan, we gave them several options. Get an access with your neighbor, get an access granted by a court, or get a new driveway that you can use yourself that's fully on your property. Since the city controls the right of way, the city does the permitting for new drives, and this drive would not meet their requirements. And so the city has asked that they exhaust.
I mean, just when you say this drive, you're referring to the current drive, is that?
The drive on the second site plan that we showed, the
Okay,
large drive.
Okay, okay.
There was an application made to the city to enlarge the driveway so that they could use it. And that does not meet the city's requirements. The city has asked that they pursue either the shared access easement with the adjacent property owner or the prescriptive easement granted by a court order prior to issuing that permit.
Gotcha.
Okay, and I would say that is not true. This does meet the city's requirements under SUDAS, which the city's adopted and the county's adopted. It's a legal driveway. The city has chosen to delay this so they don't have to deal with the storage use on this property. So the city is being adverse party to this agreement. If there was no access allowed, and again, I believe we would get it, it's just an element of time, this driveway is perfectly legal and within the requirements of SUDAS.
The city is in control of that, not us.
Right. And I
So
asked.
we need to,
And I understand why you need to look at it, but what I'm saying is the Board of Supervisors can approve that and then approve this site plan with this shown. And it's then up to the city then to say, no, you don't have a legal you don't have a legal way to get there, all right, which we don't believe is true. But from the standpoint of, and the city's gonna have to take then some action to prevent us from doing what we want, what Mr. Lamar wants to do. But he will be able to put storage units on there regardless.
Okay, but the city has already said, no, the driveway as proposed does not meet our right-of-way requirement.
That, but again, that is not true. That is
What is not
absolutely,
true about that?
because this, if Mr. Lamar was unable to get this 50-foot, use the existing 50-foot access, it's already there, it's been used forever and ever. What we're showing is within the requirements of the design requirements from SUDAS that the city follows.
Let me clarify. Are you saying that how I stated it is not true, or what this, you're saying that you're arguing with the city, not my statement of what the city said, correct?
No, what I'm saying is the city says it doesn't meet their standards. That's not true because their standards allow for this.
Okay. Okay.
I think I'm a little confused by that. The
But I
city-
think but I still maintain that your argument is with the city on that, not with the county.
That's true, but that doesn't prevent the county from approving the site plan.
So were the neighbors talked to? The neighboring property owner?
Yeah, there's
Maybe
been
some
ongoing
neighbor?
negotiations as he's gone through annexation with this. But you do have a bit of an adverse relationship between the two. Mr. Flummerfeld's trying to buy the property at pennies on the dollar. Mr. Lamar wants more. They've talked about land swaps. They've talked a whole lot of things. And those things will coalesce as we move along. But to provide, to basically block Mr. Lamar from doing his storage units prevents him from generating income on this property.
But there's no easement. There's no.
No, I believe there is an
Between
easement.
the two. There's no agreement between the
There's no
neighboring
agreement.
property and.
Yeah, in conversations and emails, Mr. Flummerfeld has acknowledged that there's an easement there. Because you have to acknowledge, and by that, it can be in two forms, is either a written one or a prescriptive easement. He's recognized that there's a prescriptive easement there as well. Again, the code, the Iowa code that's referenced works both ways. If you said, we believe there's a prescriptive easement there, Mr. Flummerfeld would have the same ability to say, no, I don't believe there is, and try to enforce and block the access. So and what the county has done is entered into this fray when they don't need to be part of it, all right?
I would just state that approving the site plan would effectively be granting rights to someone else's property.
That
The
was gonna
county
be
does
my
not
next
have the ability to do that.
Again, that's not true. I don't believe that's true
I'm
either.
sorry, I didn't hear it because
Yeah.
people started talking. Could you say the whole thing?
Yes, if you are approving this site plan, you are essentially acting as if there's an existing easement and granting rights to use the Flummerfeld property when that is not something the county has any role in. That is a prescriptive easement issued through a court order, and the applicant has had the ability since they purchased the property in 2003 to go through that process.
And again, the applicant doesn't believe that it was necessary because of the 1959 easement. And second of all, it's a process that works both directions. Both property owners have rights under the code.
Yeah, they
All
just
right.
have to go through the
And,
process.
so in essence, the county picked a side here. They picked Mr. Flummerfeld's side.
So the
They could have-
let me interrupt you.
Sure.
The easement that you said from 1950,
58, 59.
that wasn't an easement though. That was an agreement between two parties.
But isn't a recorded document,
But it was an agreement between two properties. And what it reads like is, this is not an easement.
but
That's
the
how it
property
reads.
owner that owns the property now, that the county wants to get the prescriptive easement, is the property owner that gave that contract.
Which states this is not an easement.
No. The 1958 easement is from the property owner that has this 50-foot strip. What was the property owner at that time? All right. So he gave an easement when he sold the property.
He didn't give an easement.
Yes, he did. It's listed in the 1958 or 59 document.
It says it's not an easement.
No, that's that is in the 2003 purchase agreement.
Yeah, I have copies if you'd like. But the 1959 easement grants, right, it's a real estate contract. It's a contract to purchase. To use the existing roads, you know, I'm not an attorney. There's a big difference between a contract and the easement. Easements run with the land, rights are granted to future property owners.
It's done in a form that would be what I call modern, but there's thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of handshake agreements that are enforced, and this gives us a legal basis to start with, notwithstanding all the other history that's out there that shows that this has been continuous in use. I would love to be able to say that, yeah, we can go and get this prescriptive easement, but it again takes time, and we do not have time. So the county basically, in my mind, is picking sides. They don't need to be into this fray, not with the city either. The county can approve this, and then our issue becomes with the city. And we're going to continue to use that existing access until Mr. Flummerfeld or the current property owner makes some attempt to close it. And again, it's under the same code that you're asking us to do. So it works both directions. But as I said before, I think the county is kind of picking sides here, and I prefer you to stay out of it. Approve the site plan so he can move forward with his plan. He's doing this in a way that allows it for this to be transitional. He's not tearing the trees out. He's leaving the site is much nicer than, if you've been out there recently, much nicer than the rest of the site is, because the rest of the site has been completely cleared of everything. So we're trying to do this in the least impactful way as possible. But, and again, to be cooperative with the annexation, to be cooperative with the redevelopment. But again, Mr. Lamar has to have some way to make income off of this property.
So here's what I'm hearing. Our civil attorney has said that the 1959 document is not an easement, and the 2003 document is likewise not an easement,
And
correct?
yes, and makes clear that no easement exists.
Mr. Renault has asked the county to stay out of it.
And, you know, we have access easement requirements in our county code that require us to make sure they're met, require an easement in this type of
I am
situation.
also not an attorney, but we have attorneys with the county, so that we have attorneys' advice. And they know a lot more about, you know, we can read something, but they know a lot more than we do because they've dealt with case law on it, they've dealt with the issues, and I need to defer to the attorneys.
Yeah, by the way, I've sought legal advice on this as well, and my attorney says it's just straightforward, but again, it's exactly what I told you, it's an element of time to get it done. We're gonna get it, if we had to, we could get it done, but it's just an element of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an attorney either, so I'm listening to that. I'm also looking at the language where it looks like it says the city has stated it's not able to access. It says, what it is, in the opinion of our legal staff, that the property owner should exhaust all other methods. And says, meaning if there is a possibility of getting a prescriptive rights or easement over existing drive, that needs to be done first.
And there's a reason, another reason not to do that is there's going to be some property swapping, there's going to be some development plans that have to be worked out for access. And so all you're going to have us do is put an easement on, and this is probably why as much as any reason the other property owner won't want to do it is, so we're going to turn around, we're going to get this easement, and then when the redevelopment plans come out and the city decides where the accesses are going to be, then we're going to have to vacate it and undo it all. So it doesn't make sense at this point in time to add some encumbrance that we're going to have to take care of later. again, Mr. Lamar has been very cooperative in trying to work this out, but he does have property rights. He has, a lot invested in this property. And if he's not allowed to use it, then, it's just a financial drain.
Is there a block, is there anything preventing him from using it right now? Is there a gate?
No.
Or any obstruction?
No.
Okay. So he's not being prevented from using it?
No. No, he's had conversations with the existing property owner about the access, and he had some trucks block the drive for a little bit that Mr. Lamar owns, and he was asked to relocate, which he did. So they recognize there's an access there. I wish this was a little more straightforward, and I wish I had more time, but again, it's an element of time.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you, guys.
Is there a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Can I say something?
Sure. I'm sorry, I didn't see you walking up.
Brant Lemire, 5615 West Lincoln Way. Scott did a good job here. Try to clarify little things too. That easement, we're not arguing that easement, or I don't want to argue. That's why we came up with that little different access point until we clear this up. So in the meantime, we'll have that different access. We won't use that easement until it's cleared up. That's that little blue portion that we saw. I think we're kind of getting away from that. Scott did a lot of engineering on that to do a little, and the city, and back to the city, they did approve that initially. He did approve that and sent it to the county, I believe. And then 2 days later, they rescinded that. So my point is that little blue that we had on that map, that access point, that doesn't go through that easement. So we're just not using the easement at all. That's all. So that's off. That should be off to the side. We're not on the record. Shouldn't talk about that anymore because we're using that little blue access point, which the city did approve, and then they rescinded 2 days later. Which again, like Scott mentioned, that we'll work through that going forward and whatnot. So we approved this today. That way we can start the project going until we work this through. What else I had?
Let me ask a question right there, because I see Ms. Schoeneman shaking her head when you say the city approved that easement and then changed their mind.
Yeah,
Maybe she didn't know that. I got emails on that on a Thursday.
Okay, I wasn't included.
Okay.
The city has specified that it is exceeding the width limit on driveways. There's
Okay.
a width limit of 45 feet. It is already 50.
And that I didn't see, guess either, so like some dates on that. But either way, that we can work through that. That's all the point of where the process of working through such. And again, on Ms. Merkin, on 1959 document, you mentioned that Mr. Anderson doesn't approve or like. Well, he did, but he's saying the 2003 that Ms. Basil mentioned a minute ago. The terms that you look at that, he's superseding one or the other, and that doesn't. I'm not a lawyer, of course. We didn't get lawyers involved at this time because of the time essence. Eventually we will, and we'll work through this. But my point is, on that 15, the second document doesn't supersede the first. The first document, 1959 document, is the one that all attorneys will agree with, I believe.
And that's why it would be nice if we had a court order. I think
Well,
that's why. I think
Again,
that's
time
why
essence, but you're fine, if that's, that's fine.
Yeah.
But again, it's a time essence deal, that's why we don't have that today.
Yeah, we're not, this is not a court of law. We're not judges deciding which attorney has the right case here.
Correct, and like,
Okay.
that's just.
So, and I feel like what we're being asked to do is settle a legal argument, and I think that is up to the courts.
If I may interrupt, but yeah, you're right, but there's no legal argument between the two property owners. An easement is between two property owners. The two property owners are arguing this.
Okay, so did
It
the
came in-
property owner give you an easement?
The current one, no, because I never requested it. We're going through numerous negotiations. That is very down on the totem pole of it. It's never come up to play to request, or it's not the argument between him or I. So why should I request it if it's not an argument?
So, but you were told to do one of three things, one of which would be work with your neighbor to get the easement,
But that,
and that's what we would need.
that will falter the negotiations we got on the table right now. That these negotiations are gonna be beneficial for everybody involved, the city, the county, everybody, okay? I've been trying to sell that property for 4 years, over 4 years. And it hasn't been the price that's been, in the issue here. There's been many offers. Price hasn't been an issue. That stopped that. It's other issues, kind of what we're talking today, the confusion in all this. So we're trying to control this confusion going forward. That's all we're doing. In the meantime, use a little bit of these storage units that wasn't just brought to attention just recently. It was actually, I was starting the process when Mr. Moore was here 2 years prior to this. When I closed the mobile home park, first 2 years tried to sell it, didn't sell. Third year, I got to generate some money somehow to pay these high dollar property taxes, or I got to lower the zoning on it. Okay, very simple. We chose, fine. Let's do some small storage type facility on there. That started with Mr. Moore in 2018, I believe. So I just brought that again on November 4th. I looked at it today on the way in here. November 4th is when I first talked to Amelia just recently and revisited that again. So that's why we're here today.
Was at that time the discussion of needing the easement?
At that time,
Easement.
no, because I sent him the entire chapter of code that he would have to meet and said, review these requirements. When you submit a site plan, here's what we'll review and look at and make sure it's met. I did call out some specific other issue areas that I saw, but not the easement in November.
And again,
But
that
he had
easement,
that information.
and that is true. We talked about easement, and that's when I supplied the 59 document. Later, somehow there was a recent document that they were looking at trying to supersede that 59 document, which again, this is legal matters which should come into play here. I apologize.
So kind of going off what Supervisor Basil was asking as well in regards to talking with your neighbor about the easement. It sounds like you have no disagreement with your neighbor. You could have talked with them to get this, but have opted not and to come to the supervisors.
From legal advice, I opted not because there's one in play. So we don't need another one in play. It confuses us. We probably have more confusion now today. I don't know. My legal advice said not to get a current one because there's a one in play until we go through these negotiations and land swap that we mentioned and whatnot. Then it'll all be taken care of. Wow, it's excess of what's not needed, more or less is I think how I understood it at that time. And again, there's no argument with the local property owner. It's like we're reaching for confusion in this situation. It should be very simple. The codes are, if I can do this type of product on there, and fine, we went through it. So it's like we're reaching for things to say no on. Numerous times through this process, and I've been very cooperative. Those hoops we mentioned, I almost did away with them because we had, there needed to be screening. Okay, so I allowed screening on it to keep them going. There's gonna be a lot more expense involved in it, in the screening, but I don't want to argue and fight on anything, so I cooperate. I'm very cooperative. This is the last step, the very last step of this process is where we're at. And it's been years going on.
Madam Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any additional information? All right. Is there a motion?
I would move that we deny the site development plan submitted by Grant and Weir.
Good second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Merkin?
Aye.
Basil?
Aye.
Heavens, aye. Motion's been denied. Next, we'll move on to discussion and consideration of revisions to the asset policies and procedures by Sandra King.
Morning, Board.
Morning, Sandra.
Bringing forward the asset policies and procedures for your approval of changes. this comes forward to each funder each year. And whatever changes have been made, each funder will need to approve. And that's why we give it today. A lot of it's cleanup, as you can see, but I've sort of laid out what's being changed. One of the main changes is increasing the budget limit from 100,000 to 250,000 for agencies to provide proof of their audit.
What was the reasoning for that?
They're expensive, and we did get a request from one of the agencies to see if they could do it every other year. So that wasn't approved. Instead, there was some outreach conducted to accountants to try and get an idea of what threshold might be a good one to use.
Gotcha.
And the rules are just presented, the attachment, the policies and procedures don't have a strikeout and underline, so
Excuse me, could you say that again?
it's not, there's no strikeout and underlining in the new set of rules. It's just what they'll look like after they're revised. Is that correct?
Right, I didn't give you the track changes version, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Would you prefer that one?
In the future, I would prefer the track changes. I didn't go back and look at the current ones. I didn't have time to go back and do a side-by-side comparison. And I think the track changes is easier. You know, I'm kind of relying on your memo, and it's a good memo, but I know it's not everything. So, yeah, in the future, I think track changes would be
I
better.
believe I do have one here with me if you want me to
Oh,
pass it around to you.
we have other things on our agenda, so I'm not gonna, I don't wanna take the
That's what I was
time
trying
to
to-
read through the whole thing when we have other people waiting to present.
Yeah.
Just moving forward. Moving forward, exactly.
Good. Any further questions? No, is there a motion?
I move approval of the revisions to the asset policies and procedures as presented.
Second,
Been moved and seconded. Basil?
Aye.
Merkin?
aye.
Evans? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have departmental reports with information and technology quarterly report. Is Barb on the line?
Yes, I am. Good morning, board.
Barb?
I wanted to share my screen and just clear up one small thing that if you look at, these are the website hits, and I submitted this as part of my report. The date range is wrong on this. This is from March through the end of May. So this is 3 months worth. It changes every quarter. This time it looks like the county attorney's webpage was the winner. They had the most hits. And, you know, as you can see, our COVID information, that was really way down on the list. So I think that's a good sign. That means that people are getting the information they need and they're not, you know, going to our website and trying to find it and not being able to. The second to the bottom entry here, Story County, this is just where people have gone to our main page and then not gone any further. So these are the unique visits. And of course, property records and jail information are always really popular as well. Do you have any questions on that?
No, I don't think so.
So can you, sometimes we go back and look at agendas to find information. So could you repost that with the correct dates on it?
Sure, I can do that, yes.
These are December to March, and in fact, they're March through June, you said?
Yes, well, this is March 2nd through May 31st.
You would repost that or
Yes, I will, definitely.
do that. I think that would be helpful.
And then as part of that PDF, I also include our service tickets. And usually, also depending on what's going on, software usually takes up about half of our time. Hardware, that involves like replacing computers, laptops, printers, different things like that. And then the phone system and just miscellaneous requests. Those are the top 4. Account management would be setting up new accounts and making password changes, etc. So And then I've included it on a pretty graph so you can get a better picture as to what it looks like. You have any questions on that?
I don't, but I like I like seeing that data.
Yeah, it helps us too, because, sometimes you can have a day where you think, oh gosh, all we've had are phone requests all day. But then if you look at the actual data, what seems to be the issue isn't always when you put it on paper. So it helps us to kind of plan what we're going to do and keep the staff working on things that are the most important. I also wanted to just bring up my report and go over a few, just touch on a few things unless you want me to go over all of it. We are gearing up for the managed print solution. Ethan did approve the contract or the RFP that we're going to send out. So you'll probably see that on next week's agenda. Very little changes. He just wanted us to put down that this is a repeat of the former one. So we're excited about that. It's like Murphy's Law. All of a sudden, all of those smaller printers that were not a part of the managed print solution are now breaking down, and we're getting calls. Hey, can you help us with this printer? And we did have 2 older printers in cold storage that we were able to fix up and implement. But that's it. So if there are any other ones that break, we're just going to have to make do until January. And we found too that if you have to get up and walk to a printer, you think twice about what you're going to print, and maybe you didn't need to print something after all. So I think it's working out for the best. We're finishing up the permitting software for environmental health. That's been a really great project, and Matt Corey did a fantastic job of creating that in an Access database. But like anything else, it outgrew the software capabilities, and so now we're putting this on a web access so that when they're out in the field, they don't have to VPN into the system or make notes and copy them in later. They can actually put everything right in the software. And this has been helpful for us contractors and everything too. So the last phase, the final phase that we may or may not do, depending, is to put it all in HTML format. And that would be something we'd talk about at budget time next year. But for now, Matt's really happy with the progress our vendor has done with that. And I'm glad that we were able to, at least at first we had concerns that maybe we couldn't include it all because Access is kind of a different type of software, but it was all put in there, and I think the vendor did an excellent job. Paging system, you may have noticed some gentlemen walking around the second floor installing equipment for the paging system. The vendor has run into the same problem that we are running into with hardware. They are just getting a little bit at a time, so they are installing what they get, and we've requested, instead of having all this disruption all the time, let's do one floor at a time. So they've gotten the equipment for the second floor of the admin building. Now we're just waiting on the equipment for the other floors, and they did do some additional site surveys at HSC. They were not sure about the ceiling height. So it is progressing, but like everything else, we're just kind of being held up by the hardware shortage. The carpal migration for the county attorney's office is going very smoothly, much more smoothly than I thought it might. And we just got our first invoice yesterday in the mail. So really the data cleanup has been ongoing, and I think the attorneys are pretty happy with the way the data came over, and we're just working on getting that email link to the software so that they can get emails through the program. And I think we're still ready to go next month, so it's exciting. I don't know what we're going to be doing with the rest of the pro law. We didn't use it for the full year that it was budgeted for, so I'm not sure if we're going to get a refund on some of that or not. The website refresh. So we were all excited and thinking, they told us we were eligible in August. So the website committee got together and we had a meeting internally, and then we met with Civic Plus later in March. And they told us that they weren't even going to start until August. But in the meantime, and I did mention, I don't know what your feelings are on the website hits, but I'm not real happy with the format that comes out in. And so they said they have a couple different options that we can utilize. So we're going to be working on some different ways to get website hits in a format that's a lot more user friendly and looks better. And then we also mentioned that we had some concerns about getting pictures. It seems like it's an ongoing job. So that's our homework. We're supposed to be working on getting some pictures ready, and then be ready to start in August when we'll meet our project manager. Also wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing for cybersecurity. I did talk at the managers meeting last week, and but one thing I'm excited about, there is going to be this vendor who is doing our penetration testing. He's also going to be at the ITAG conference next week, and he's going to do 2 days of specific security testing with Story County. But Joel and Kyle are going down there, and they'll participate in that there. But also, the ICIT group has recognized that some of the smaller counties don't have a dedicated IT team. And so the security functions are kind of passed around, and whoever wants to pick up the glove is the one that does it. And so they went down to Poweshiek County and just did kind of an evaluation and looked at some suggestions, and they involved a lot of the board members and the elected officials, and came up with a recommendation and a job description and a salary suggestion for um, actually hiring IT staff down there. So I'm glad that they are doing this. These people that are looking for smaller fish to hijack for their ransomware, they're picking on the smaller counties that they know don't have anybody who's dedicated actually looking at the security on a daily basis. So I'm glad that the ICIT group has taken this on. And we already did our first here at Story County. We got our first report on some penetration testing by the CISA team, and there were a couple things they wanted us to look at, but overall, I was really pleased. There weren't any glaring deficiencies or things that we really need to, shut down now. So that was good. It made me feel better about where we're at. It looks like DMAC was the latest victim of the ransomware attacks, and they're still closed today. So we don't want to be that person. Um, just want to be ready in case it happens. If you've noticed, your auto attendant line has been updated finally. We did finally get the call tree so that press zero wasn't number one, which some people just didn't want to wait for the rest of the options and would press zero, and then that would tie up the line for other calls coming in. Just a lot of miscellaneous little things down here. We did get facilities is now using the help desk software, so that's good. We had some fine tuning there, and the first day I'm like, why am I getting all the facilities tickets? But we were able to then filter that, so I don't see those anymore. And also I wanted to talk about every couple years, I do meet with department heads and just go over some of the things that maybe they didn't put a ticket in for, or, felt like, oh, it's not good enough to, bother you with, or so I met with, I sent out an email and got a lot of response. Some people wanted to talk about IT needs. Some people said, no, we're good, but thanks. Some people said, well, I don't need to meet, but here's a couple things I'd like to ask. So had quite a collection, but a lot of the things that we talked about, I think, is just to give them some assurance that yes, we are looking at these things, and you might not know it on a daily basis. But we talked about phones. I do plan to replace the headset, or not the heads, the hand, the desk sets next fiscal year. We'll talk about that in December more when it comes budget time. But we used to have a lot of spares. When CLP was sold, we got all those phones back, but now they're all gone. We've used them all to replace, break, fix phones. They no longer sell those. So now if we need a phone, we have to go on to eBay. And so yeah, it's time to replace them. I know the other phones lasted 20 years. We just don't get that kind of lifetime out of the new equipment. Um, we did talk about email and security. We talked about the Mimecast and the SPF and the ransomware and everything. And, as one department head mentioned, it's not fun. I know we need this. There's no winning. But I wanted to make sure that they knew that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that communication is not cut off. We just want to make sure the wrong communication doesn't come through. And part of the IT group, we reached out to them like, hey, are we too strict? Is this something that maybe we should tone down a little bit? And many of the other counties are using Mimecast as well, and they think it's a great product. And I say kudos to you, keep using it. So we'll work through that. And some of the smaller agencies do not have the SPF protection, and I've reached out and helped some of them. Some of them don't reach back. So I don't know if it's fixed or not, but really, if you are going to have a ransomware attack, this is where it's going to come from, is the smaller ones who don't have security built in. So we want to make sure that everybody's safe. I also talked to people about file storage. There were some questions, I tried to save something to my shared drive and it said it was out of space. So we do have reports that come in, and it tells us daily what the space needs are and how close people are to filling up their shared space, and then we just adjust it as necessary. So it's not like you're out of space. We want to keep it as tight as possible because file storage is expensive. And also, we don't want, for instance, if we had a virus or something, if it starts multiplying rapidly, it's going to run out of space before it's going to cause a lot of issues. So once we get that red light saying, hey, this drive is out of space, we always check to see why. And sometimes it's because people have saved a video file where it shouldn't be saved, which is huge. We also talked about the password policy. Everybody seemed to think that was fine. I went over the hardware replacement schedule and talked about why wireless devices were not encouraged. Some people have brought in their own personal devices and they use them, but and then we did have a few requests for additional webcams and monitors. Which is one reason why I don't have a webcam. I gave mine away. Um, and I think standard hardware installation does not include dual monitors, but things change, and the way we operate today, I think there is a good case for people getting dual monitors, and if they want to, we usually, if there's enough space on their desk, we usually install two. I talked about these help desks and ticketing process, and had a lot of good comments on that. And one comment, I'd give you 5 stars if I could. So I always say, let's not go 24 hours and not have a ticket answered. Even if you don't have an answer, let the person know that you're at least looking at it and working on it. I think that helps a lot for people to think it didn't go out there and never land and nobody's looking at it. We talked about printing. I talked about the managed print solution and the timeline. And you know, I think everybody recognizes that this is the way to get the best pricing and service for the county. Another necessary evil kind of thing. We don't all need a printer at our desk. Um, and that went over quite well. I gave everyone an update on the paging system and the website refresh. And I said, is there anything else I haven't talked about that you want to know? And a couple of department heads wanted to know about Zoom. They really wanted to know if we're going to keep using it, and they really like it. And I know we just renewed the license for another year, so we've got another year of Zoom under our belts. So I think it is a good, efficient tool, and it seems like it has worked well for us, and it's flexible. So I think as far as the IT standpoint is, I think it's a good product. And then we also had several department heads that want us to continue to allow VPN access. And they said, especially when the weather is bad, they want to know that they have the VPN capability. Now that everything's set up and in place, there's nothing we need to do. It won't benefit anything by removing the VPN access. So for now, we're keeping it as it is. Do you have any questions, board? I know that was a lot of information. I went through it kind of fast.
One question for you. What is your resistance to like wireless, for like wireless mouse, or I know you mentioned that folks have asked for that and it sounds like you've got some reservations.
Well, we ran into this problem. What I don't like about wireless is that the batteries die without notification. So you could be in the middle of something and your batteries are dead. And in order to get your computer to recognize your new device or your device after you replace the batteries, sometimes you have to reboot and then you lose what you were working on. Now, especially, I know we had this happen once in dispatch. They were using a wireless keyboard and they had to reboot and they lost the call. We don't want that to happen. But also, another issue with wireless devices, there's so many out there, it's just like cell phones. It's hard to support them. A lot of times, Microsoft only likes Microsoft approved devices. And so once you get one and then find out, oh, great, it doesn't work, then you're kind of stuck with it. But also, and I had this happen to me once, sometimes wireless devices share drivers. So I was in a meeting once and we were all sitting around the table. We all had our laptops and wireless mice. And suddenly my mouse started going across my page and doing things. And I'm like, is my laptop haunted? What's going on? Well, it turns out that someone at the end of the table also had the same mouse, a Targus mouse, and it was my laptop was picking it up. So everything he was doing on his laptop was going on mine. So that was a little bit challenging to try to grab it back. But there's a lot of issues with it. And like I said, if users are bringing them in from home, we don't say, no, you can't, but we just advise not to. And it's not part of the standard installation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I have one question, and it's about the website refresh, and we have more time if they're not even going to start looking at it until August. But I'm just thinking about the experience in the last year, and whenever we put things on our homepage, when you go to the website and open it up, all you see is a picture, a huge picture.
Right. Yes, that was discussed.
Yeah, well, and then people have to scroll down. They have to know to scroll down that there's a homepage that has things that we've put on it because we want people to see them right away because they're timely.
Right.
We've also got a lot of stuff that maybe is better off in a tab, like offices and departments, looking at that now. Why do we have that on our homepage? Why don't we have that as a tab under government directory? We've cluttered our homepage up so much that it's almost meaningless for the things we want people to go there for that are urgent things. So I hope that you're going to look at that and even look at getting those pictures off or putting them at the bottom of the page so they don't interfere with content.
Smaller banner.
I'd take them all.
Right. Yeah. And when we did the refresh several years ago, we were one of the last ones that they did on that template. So then after they got ours done, they brought out a new template, and it isn't like that on the new template. And that was one of the criticisms that we brought up in the pre-meeting, was that, why does this take up the whole page? And they assured us that their new template, and they showed us a couple examples, the picture is transparent and the words slide over the picture, which you know, the effect was kind of nice. We can choose whatever we want. They did point out that the current setup was geared a lot toward people who access it with a mobile phone. I didn't see where that was a benefit, but that's what they were telling us. So yes, the new the new format will not have the huge picture that takes up your whole page and people wonder, you know, where am I at or where's the stuff? All I'm seeing is a picture. So yes, thanks for bringing that up, Linda. That was a huge one of the main concerns that people had with the current site.
You just brought up another concern that I have now with our website, but I could, depending on the direction you go. People who have vision issues have a hard time with text that goes over pictures. They have gray rather than black text on white backgrounds. And if you want somebody to look at something, I'd be very glad to do it and tell you if there's something that gives problems to vision impaired people, because I have a lot of trouble with websites when they get busy, when there's not enough contrast between background and text, and when pictures and text collide. It's not good for people with disabilities. So
Good point. I have jotted that down. I will bring that up in our August meeting. Any other questions, board?
As I'm saying, don't get too fancy.
I agree. Keep it simple.
Not beauty.
Thanks.
Barb, is there any concern about storage running out? I see the discussion with department heads talking about if there'd be storage for paper files and converting them electronic. Is there going to be any issue with that moving forward?
So we refresh our storage hardware every 3 years, and at that time we evaluate, you know, do we need to increase it? And we always increase a little, but we increase it by a certain percentage. So if we know that there's going to be a lot of scanning going on and that somebody is going to need a lot more storage, we take that into consideration. Right now, there is no fear of running out of storage. And just to let you know how storage is handled, and one reason why we keep the mailbox limit so tight is there's two different kinds of storage. So we have the file storage, which is static. It means it doesn't change. It's just sitting there. It doesn't get accessed a lot. So we put that data on cheaper drives. And then we keep the email data and things that you're accessing frequently. We keep those on the expensive drives. So it makes a lot of difference in the cost of the storage device as to how and where the files are stored. So we always, like to keep it as simple as possible, but yet not spend a lot of money. So right now, as far as the scanning needs are concerned, we aren't in danger of running out of storage. We just replaced our storage device earlier this year. So we think we're pretty in a good spot. But like anything else, we always make sure that it's expandable if needed. So if we need to add another shelf, we can. Does that help, Latifa?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Barb.
Thanks, board. Have a good rest of your day.
Next, we have update on countywide watershed assessment and implementation matrix. Good morning. I had to look, it is still morning.
I think Leanne and I and a few of the other working group members will maybe tag team the report, so. I email you. So, just so you know, and Amelia and Leanne and Linda Heather can maybe help me fill in the gaps if I miss anyone. But so you know, the folks that are on the county's water quality working group consist of elected officials, department heads that have responsibilities in water as part of their scope business. So Leanne is on it, Amelia is on it, I am on it, Linda is on it, Sandra is on it, Darren is on it, Scott Wall is on it, Matt Boyk is, and who am I missing?
Margaret James Welsh
Margaret,
is still
of course.
listed on this slide.
So the new environmental health director will be on it. So those are the members on it. It was set up as a result of the assessment, the countywide watershed assessment that was done. It was one of the many implementation action items on the implementation plan. And so we've been meeting semi-regularly and the implementation plan, if you will, really forms the backbone for what that group does. Each member on that working group has various responsibilities for tasks that are coming out of that implementation plan that's in their responsibility or their daily lecture. So all of us have been working, some independently and some jointly on some of these tasks, depending on the task. And so we'll go through some of that with you here this morning. Do you want to go over this one, Leanne?
Yeah, I can very briefly, because, Linda, you were here, I think, when the report was maybe accepted by the board. I don't remember, but I know definitely you two have joined since. We Story County contracted through an RFP process with EOR, firm out in Minnesota, to develop the watershed assessments. We were originally scheduled to do this in May, so I did forward you a link to that watershed assessment like that weekend before. But this slide just shows really the components of that report. It is done for the entirety of Story County. At the point in time when we contracted to have it done, I believe we were the only county to have that level of analysis done, and I believe we may still be. It's an assessment, it is not a plan. It was really not intended to be the be-all, end-all. It was really the jumping off point to really, one, energize efforts at a countywide level, but then to assign some priorities to different tasks. So it does include those components as I said on the slide. The assessment also had a series of recommendations that EOR included. As Mike said, we took those internally then, and those began to form the implementation matrix that was then formally adopted by the Board of Supervisors and also added as an addition to the C2C plan's implementation matrix, the cornerstone to capstone comprehensive plan matrix. So really that's Mike went over where we've been, how we've gotten to where we are right now. We wanted to get back in front of what is in all intents and purposes, a newer board that you have not seen this, especially knowing that there's a new position that will be coming on board with the beginning of the fiscal year to really go forward with a lot of these efforts, not replacing the staff involvement in the watershed assessment working group, but supplementing that as well. So with that, I'll drive the slideshow and just add them as needed. Mike, you don't need to talk about this goal statement?
Sure.
I do want one thing that as staff, we are starting to look at the assessment. We needed to have really a goal statement for the watershed assessment working group. So that's what's up there on the slide. I mean, you've seen this a couple times. I won't bore everyone by reading that, but really that led to then help identify who was missing the table from the staff level. And we came back, we prioritized the different strategies in the implementation matrix, but we came back like a year later and added more staff. So it just demonstrates it continues to evolve, which is I think the true intention of having this assessment and really kickstarting the effort on a countywide level. So with that, the implementation matrix is organized three ways. There are regulatory tasks, like the stormwater ordinance. There's programmatic tasks that outreach, other areas, and then capital improvement, the actual projects on the ground. And so with that, I will hand it off to,
I think I'm first.
you first.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we choreographed this, so we're gonna punt a little bit.
Yeah, so adopt and implement a stormwater ordinance. That's one of those regulatory aspects. We did that in 2019. I think there is another item later on where we do more outreach on that ordinance, part of that programmatic task. And that is something that we're looking forward to doing with our cities, and then also, the public in Story County who's impacted by this ordinance, developers. We did put those efforts on hold because we thought there would be a bill introduced this legislative session that was not, that would limit cities and counties' abilities to adopt stormwater management ordinances, but that was never introduced. So looking forward to doing some more outreach on that in the future, which I think is 2.12 on our implementation matrix, the outreach piece.
Can you give us just a little bit of an idea of how you will do that outreach, who you're going to be talking to, what's your
The
plan?
future outreach or the outreach we do on the ordinance?
Well, the ordinance,
Yeah. So when we adopted the ordinance in 2019, we had a stakeholders group. We invited different engineers, folks from the environmental community, folks from the development community, to attend a roundtable discussion with the county, where we looked at their concerns and suggestions and, put them into the ordinance itself, which is a really valuable process. In terms of future outreach, we've had a few stormwater management plans that have come through. We could probably do some more outreach to that stakeholder group and say, how's it going, to folks that have submitted a plan. But I think the main goal under 2.12 on our implementation matrix is to work with cities, smaller cities in the county, to market our model ordinance from the watershed assessment, which is a little different than the one we adopted, and talk to them about the benefits and do some education on what erosion control can look like for, just even property owners to do themselves when they have a project. Oh, I can take this one too. We have not done any work on this next one, 1.2 floodplain ordinance modification. We adopted new floodplain regulations in 2019, but they did not incorporate this piece here, which is about, prohibiting incompatible uses within stream and lake buffers, but because the ordinance mainly focused on our new freeboard requirements of 3 feet, right, and restrictions on soils for fill.
I think Story County really needs to be proud of this, that we do have an elevation requirement of 3 feet above what the regulatory base flood elevation is. We've incrementally gone, state minimum is 100 feet. State minimum is 1 foot. At one point we had 18 inches and now we're up to 3 feet, and that will have positive impacts to reduce flood risk for those that do locate in the special flood hazard area. But as Amelia said, we haven't gone the next steps as intended or as explored and anticipated by this. But we did add for fill, having some additional regulations, compaction rates, the amount of fill. That is a step forward, and that's another very positive step to celebrate. I should say too, if you have any questions as we're going. Yeah, exactly.
I think it goes without saying, but I think all those regulatory things that we've done, both the two that Amelia and Leanne have talked about, and then the one that we haven't talked about yet, but that's the septic ordinance that Margaret recently brought forward to you. Those are all just incredible efforts and steps forward in helping to improve our water quality. So I think that as a board, you should be proud that you're moving in that direction. So it's commendable, and I think it really is impactful for us. as far as the programmatic side, and if you will, the bulk of the implementation action items are on the programmatic side. First one we talked about already, and that is commencement of a working group. And like Leanne said, I think we're at the time, and I think still are, maybe the only county that has such a comprehensive watershed assessment done. But part of that too is I think we might be in the same situation with the working group, in that it's a focus on the county to get those folks together and working in the same direction toward water quality. So I think, again, that's been tremendous to be able to have that. I think everyone on it is appreciative of that opportunity to get together and have those discussions, work together toward a common goal. Some of these other programmatic items on this slide, 2.2 through 2.4, these were listed as medium priorities for us. Frankly, we don't have a lot of progress to speak of on those things. These are long-looking, long-term items that would go about setting up perhaps some banks, if you will, some mitigation banks for wetlands, for stream mitigation. And if you're not familiar with that, just very Cliff Notes version on the description of that is that through a regulatory process, Clean Water Act regulatory process, developers, agencies, anyone that is affecting, having a detrimental effect on wetlands or streams has to do mitigation as part of their permitting. And so mitigation banks are set up for different purposes to, if you will, do the work ahead of time and establish a bank with those credits. And then as developers need to, for to satisfy their permitting requirements, need to invest in or buy credits to offset a negative impact somewhere, then they fund that mitigation bank. So in other words, let's say a mitigation bank costs $100,000 and you do the restoration work and it costs that $100,000 to do the restoration work, let's say on 10 acres of wetland. Someone down the line is going to need to, through their permit, they're going to be compelled to buy restoration credits. So then they send the bank $10,000 per acre or whatever the amount may be. And so the bank then gets funded. And over time, the bank would recoup all of those restoration expenses plus some, plus administrative expenses, etc. So at the end, once that bank is completely sold out, you maybe have done, I'll just use that same example, $100,000 worth of wetland restoration work, and that's all been paid for by people that, or organizations that needed that work as part of a mitigation plan, again, required by the permitting process. Does that make sense? Kind of Cliff Notes version of the mitigation bank. It's confusing.
Yeah.
So some of these programmatic items look at or talk about us looking into and considering that as a funding mechanism in the future. Then the next slide is protecting native prairie remnants. I say the first and foremost one that we did there recently has been the Prairie View development, i.e. Dotson Farms development west of Gilbert. So that we identified as being a pretty important native remnant. Iowa used to be 85% prairie. At the moment, it's less than 1/10% in prairie. So depending on what metrics you look at, Iowa's the most developed state in the nation. So in that, what I mean by developed is the least amount of native land cover. So that's why, you know, it's important for us to work toward protecting some of those native vegetation types. That's what's referenced there in 2.5.
I have a question about that specifically, because development has started at Dodson. Has anybody gone out to check to make sure they've got all the places
The
separated
surveys
that they need
done.
to? Because I've gone by and I've been concerned about a couple of them.
They deeded the land to you already, right?
Yeah.
So the transaction's done to protect it. But you're asking about
That's
the
the one
site
quarter
section.
down by the creek, by Iowa Creek.
Yeah,
I'm talking
I got
about the hillsides.
The hillsides are currently deeded to the county.
Yes.
They are.
Correct. And they have put those protective measures in place, the temporary, the erosion control measures, the silt fence, et cetera.
Okay.
Those are in place per
The agreement.
the agreement.
Yeah.
So we've actually had some work days out there doing some cedar tree removal, and we've got some folks that are now doing wildlife surveys and continuing some plant surveys out there as well. So that's happening on that property. Next one here is 2.6, sensitive areas inventory. You know, we started this, and that was probably before some of you were supervisors as well. But it was an effort to identify what we have for environmentally sensitive areas in the county. We've gone through a few different phases as we have progressed with it. Right now, we're in the second phase, which is the wrapping up the field work. The field work has all been done. And now the report is being written by our contractor. So expect that we should have that report anytime now, but it is taking some extra time.
I'll just hop in on this one. There's a portion of this one that's assigned to our department too, as well as protecting the native prairie remnants in the riparian areas. And we're working on updating our natural resources areas map right now and our site planning standards to better protect specific resources. So right now we have a blanket statement of can impact more than 15% of natural resources. So we're working on, but what does that look like for specifically riparian areas or specifically, you know, native prairie remnants, making it more specific and, you know, have more teeth. So that's something that we'll be doing outreach on to affected property owners, I hope by July. We've used your study to kind of review where natural areas are a little bit and routed that to conservation to look at the mapping as well.
Yeah, so Amelia and her staff have done a lot of the heavier lifting on review of that natural resource area, and have worked with our staff on verifications. So I feel like that's a pretty good product, right?
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
This is not a map that we can see right now.
No, I have to do one final review and then we're gonna put it on the website and hopefully do postcards to everyone that's impacted and do an interactive mapping where folks can zoom in on their property and leave us a comment or a question. So I'll send it to you when it's active.
Great.
2.7, nutrient reduction and bacteria reduction practice implementation. We really haven't done a lot on that one. We have been able to, if you will, research some cost share opportunities that are available for landowners with these practices, and so we have that inventory of what's currently available for folks to offset implementation costs. And through our programs, our education efforts, our stakeholders that we've been trying to implement or trying to educate folks about what's available. We really haven't got very far in this though, and this is one of the things that we'd like this new position to help with, is to really start reaching out there and providing resources that might just be pointing in different directions, because there are so many agencies stakeholders that have a piece in this particular item, that it gets very confusing for the general public or for the landowner to know, now which one do I talk to Farm Service Agency about, or which one do I go to ISU Extension about, or which one to the Natural Resource Conservation Service, etc. So it does get a little confusing. So we answer some of those questions and hope to point people in the right direction.
And you might have seen an article just over the last weekend, I think it was, in the Des Moines Register about Polk County's program, where they are actually working to install bioreactors and saturated buffers. And we've had a couple presentations to some groups from the Polk County watershed. Is John's title watershed coordinator?
John Swanson.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's a lot of moving parts to it, is my thought, and that's simply because there are so many agencies, and it is difficult for a landowner. So I'm interested as we get the watershed coordinator position here and on board and trained and kind of pointed at, to kind of look at that project and see what we might be able to do in Story County. It's a very interesting article, kind of pros and cons of how many installations do you really need in order to truly make a difference? And somebody's kind of poo-pooing and saying how thousands you need, but you've got to start somewhere. That's the whole point. There's other things that aren't within our control, but there are some things within our control.
And I'll digress here a little bit, but back up somewhat in regard to nutrient reduction. Probably at least some of you more than others, but aware that we have an Iowa nutrient reduction plan. And it sets out a reduction in nutrients, i.e. phosphorus and nitrogen, I think specifically nitrogen, a 45% reduction, which is significant. Tagging on to what Linda said, we asked Iowa State to give us, based on our countywide watershed assessment, and I need to make this available to everyone. We asked them to tell us how many different practices of different reduction mechanisms would we have to do in the county to meet that goal, or to meet different thresholds. This was a tool that EOR did for us when they did the assessment, is they made a spreadsheet that helps us calculate that. And so then ISU took that and they were able to then calculate countywide. We would have to have, don't quote me on this number, but X number of saturated buffers and bioreactors and X miles of waterway buffers stream buffers in order to meet those reduction goals. It's staggering. It's quite staggering how many are needed. But again, like Linda said, it's easy to get lost in that magnitude of the number. However, the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? You have to start somewhere. And that's what I think we're doing. This program that Linda referenced, Edge of Field Practice, it's a nitrogen reduction program that Polk County set up, a year ago, and is seeing some significant results now. In fact, last year, I think they put in more saturated buffers and bioreactors than were put in statewide. And so it's really significant. They made the onerous much lighter on the landowner. Prior, the landowner had to navigate, if you will, different bureaucratic systems and contracts and work with contractors in order to install these practices. So now they have a different recipe for doing that, and it makes it much easier on the landowner. So hence this really high adoption rate in Polk County. They are very supportive. They came to us and said, this is really working. Let's consider doing this, or we ask you to consider doing this here at Story County also as our neighbor, and really let's focus on a couple counties here in central Iowa that can really be impactful. And so that's what we're kind of working through, as Linda referenced.
The other thing I think it really is useful for a landowner, it's not just how to get the financial resources together, but having somebody actually come onto your land and say, yes, a bioreactor would be a good thing, or no, a bioreactor wouldn't, but a saturated buffer, but some other practice, to really help the landowner decide what for her or his land is the right thing to do. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing. And you really have to do your own research, you really have to put your own finances together. So I think anything that we can do to help facilitate landowners to do this. And I know Polk County put some money in, that's something Story County would have to look at, is because, so much might be USDA, so much might be IDOLS has some money for something, somebody else might have some money, but it's, what it takes to kind of complete that picture sometimes. And that's where I think I've felt some kind of frustration, is how does a group of people like our water, like our committee, group here, working group, how do we, when we have all these other full-time jobs, how do we put that together? And, we spent some time thinking about that, and that's why I think we came up with, we really need a person to do this. The working group can help direct that person, whatever, but we really need to, if we're really gonna make a difference on some of these things, we really, and help private landowners, we really need somebody out there doing it full time. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's
I'm excited we can.
tremendous,
Get me.
tremendous project with some really nice potential. Drainage district operational guidance, this was listed as a medium priority for the rotation plan. And frankly, just to make a long story short with this, we know that we have century-old drainage district law that we're not specifically trying to change here, but work within that law. And so when we have drainage district projects that come up, then we make sure we ask our engineer to give us what are some water quality methods that can be, or practices that could be engaged in, within the district improvement. So all kinds of, we don't need to go down a rabbit hole with that. I think you're familiar with a lot of that with your recent drainage district discussions. But we're fairly limited on what we can do. We know we don't want to be impactful for, if you will, to be restrictive, if you will, on the water flow, but still enable that same flow and still not have a levy onto district landowners for doing that. So other items, 2.9, water quality monitoring. I tell you what, this has been this is a high priority for us and been a huge success story thus far. We just completed the water quality monitoring plan that I think presented to the board a few months ago. This has been one of those that's been so encouraging that we've got such collaboration throughout the county. So we've got several different cities involved in this, as well as other stakeholders. Leopold Center, Prairie Rivers of Iowa, City of Ames, City of Gilbert, City of Huxley, City of Nevada, City of Roland. All of those are part of our water quality monitoring team. I'm probably missing some there, but and so it's really encouraging that now folks are getting together and looking at what we can do to identify water quality concerns, get some baseline data, but then also part and parcel with that is to get people more engaged with water. I.e., one example is the recent City of Ames Lowhead Dam mitigation project, in which they could have just taken the dam out or modified that somehow, but no, they chose to use that as an opportunity to get more people engaged with the river. And so they have a tremendous project there. At any rate, so the water quality monitoring piece is broke up into several different facets. Some is direct lab analysis and some is volunteer and field analysis. City of Ames is helping significantly. In fact, they're doing all the lab work. And then we're really coordinating the volunteer pieces on that. And so at the moment, I think we've got 20 different sites throughout the county that we have volunteers monitoring the water at. We've also began monitoring at, either began or are continuing to do monitoring at 5 of our priority lakes throughout the county. So that's in process. So again, very, very encouraging results on the monitoring front. As far as municipal outreach here, this was something that Margaret had was in her wheelhouse, as well as Amelia has someone here, so.
Yeah,
Wanna chat about that?
sure. And this isn't the one where I was talking about earlier, reaching out to cities, the public on why stormwater management is important, erosion control is important, and for cities doing training on what a stormwater management ordinance might look like for them. And the phrase in here is conduct training on modern stormwater management and erosion control. So it's not, just sending it through a concrete, pipe, using the infrastructure and other practices. I am really looking forward to assistance from the watershed coordinator on devising this outreach strategy, but I know our planners are both very interested in this area too. And again, it was on hold because we didn't know if cities would be able to adopt an ordinance, but it is also on our work program. So that will probably start next year. I think it was a low priority given that pending legislation, but hopefully 2022.
Next one is WMA, Collaboration Watershed Management Authority Collaboration. And Leanne has done significant work on that, as has Linda. So maybe I'll just broad brush here and you guys can add to it, but we are members of 4 WMAs. 3 WMAs, no, 3.
3, but the board may be one part of the one by Zering, if you think what that creek is up in Zering.
It's Minerva,
Minerva Creek.
but that's part of,
I don't know if the board ever officially
yeah, I would know.
joined that one, but
It's not it's not a WMA.
Yeah, it's a
It's
coalition right now.
coalition.
We're talking, so the ones we're members of are Iowa Creek, Headwaters. That's the most recent one.
4 Mile.
4 Mile, thank you. And then the other one is this coalition, which is covered the Iowa River watershed, which covers essentially that northeast part of Story County.
It's got
Very
just a
northeast
little
tip.
bit. And that's why I didn't join at the time that they were asking, because we were just getting the headwaters going, which covers the WMA for the headwaters of South Skunk, which covers about over half of Story County. And I thought, with just that little bit of Story County, and meetings are going to be over in Tama, it just didn't seem like a good use of time.
So WMAs, again, are, if you will, that's the mechanism that we have to work with within the state legislature state code to set up, if you will, like-minded, locally driven watershed action groups, advocacy groups that can move water quality improvements forward at the local level. And so the most recent one, again, is Headwaters that we're working on, Headwaters of the South Skunk. It includes the area in Story County, north of Ames and west of Roland, if you will. Bear Creek area, all of Story City. Gilbert is marginally out of it, but that section of the county, and then a significant portion of Hamilton County. And so Linda's actually the chair of the WMA there, and we have, I think you're familiar that we're acting as fiscal agent on a grant that we received, that the headwaters received through the state, from the state for an assessment. It'll be a similar assessment to what we did on a countywide basis. I think they'll be able to take some of the things that we've done here and look at those things in the rest of the WMA area. Very excited that we've got several cities involved now in that WMA. We've got a meeting coming up this week.
Thursday.
What's
Yeah,
that?
Thursday in
Yeah.
Story City.
With that WMA, it's actually gonna be an in-person meeting in Story City, so pleased to be able to do that. Hardin County has signed on. They have a marginal piece of this watershed or this WMA. Hamilton County has signed on, and so we're really pleased to have partnerships with those counties that maybe traditionally we haven't had. So that's really encouraging.
I just want to
Anything to add to that, Linda or Leanne?
I just wanted to ask the supervisor, since it is new, and if you need a break at all.
I'm good.
Okay. I just wanted to check on that.
We'll try to go quick here. Erosion control is the next one.
Yeah, I think I've touched on this in our goals. It's in a variety of different ones. But this one specifically reaches on engaging residents and the public versus cities, and mentions an outreach program with schools. And there's also, I think, a review of our stormwater management ordinance involved in code enforcement practices and streamlining the permitting process, which we could look at. It's a pretty new ordinance, so we're still learning what's going well, that kind of thing.
Very good. The next is nutrient reduction, bacteria reduction outreach, which we chatted about a little bit. It's just a continuing effort that we have. Floodplain management.
Yeah, this one is on working with DNR and FEMA about conservation practices in the floodplain, and how to allow those. And we haven't initiated work on that yet. Anything to add? Okay.
Feedlot outreach is something that Margaret was working on. So that'll be up to the new environmental health director for that work. Again, pretty important piece and something that, as you're well aware, we only have so much capability in regard to state law. So, but we can do outreach, and so that's what this is about. Source water protection plans, that's kind of the lower priority for us. However, I will say that monitoring group with so many of the cities, there's quite a bit of interest there among the cities on that, and so they are. Several of them are moving forward with at least continuing education on establishing some source water protection plans. So there is growing communication there between those cities. So that's tremendous. I think that was a part of a product of the water quality working group getting together, just to have all those different municipalities represented and talking about their water quality needs. Wastewater management practices, again, something that Margaret had been working on. And obviously the septic ordinance. Capital improvements, drainage ditches we chatted about already, and then Story County infrastructure. And I think this is just something referencing when we do any kind of, whether it be vertical infrastructure, particularly as it relates to requirements in the stormwater ordinance, then we make those designs as part of the plans in any vertical infrastructure that we do.
Yeah, the county's not exempt from our stormwater management ordinance and its own projects.
So then, obviously, next steps. The next thing would be to bring this person on board, the new watershed position. Thanks to Leanne and Amelia, we've completed the interviews for that and are in that selection process right now for that position. We've got good candidates for it, and not ready to say anything about selection yet, but we've got good prospects, and so we look forward to that. The goal would be to have this person start at the beginning of the fiscal year, so probably shortly after the holiday.
And the person is going to be housed here in the admin building, correct? Down
Correct.
in low level. And I think that's gonna really be good because that gives access to planning and development and to environmental health. And especially with the new environmental or health director coming on as well, I think that's really gonna be a good nexus. And I think I'm happy about that.
Agreed. I think that there's so much of the work on water quality is happening with folks here in this building that it just makes sense.
And emergency management as well, because flooding issues, so. And Scott is our drainage clerk, so, yeah, but then, yeah, most of the working group is here in this building.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you come over occasionally.
I think Darren and I are the holdouts, maybe.
You know where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really pleased to be able to do that. I've asked all of the working group members to identify things that they'd like, their responsibilities out of the implementation plan that they'd like assistance from the coordinator on. And so everyone's been looking at that and providing that input. And then we'll use that in making priorities for coordinator workload and time. So that's going very well, and I expect that, again, I expect that this position will help all of the different departments that are working on these different aspects. So it's just encouraging to be able to be here and be able to say that and say thank you for authorizing that position. You want to talk about C2C?
Yeah, we can talk about the next two. And I referenced this earlier in the presentation. The board knows we're doing the annual review and the 5-year review of sorts of the Cornerstone and Capstone Comprehensive Plan. I did mention that this is adopted as a component of that C2C's implementation matrix. By default, we'll be looking at this implementation matrix as well. So there may be some possible revisions that come forward from that process, in addition to bringing the, onboarding the new watershed coordinator and discussions and that working group. And with that, the watershed assessment working group membership does need to be modified, and it will be an agenda item on the board's future agenda, because that group's membership has been defined by the board. Specifically, persons will probably revise that to make it be position specific rather than name specific. So we don't have to come back each time, but watch for that in the next couple weeks. It'll probably be just a consent agenda item, but just so you have some history on why that's coming forward.
Very good. So any questions?
Just my one question, when I'm looking at your high, medium, and low priority issues, so if you set a kind of a time frame with that at all, or not necessarily? It's just, you're just kind of recognizing that at that time of what are high, medium, or low priorities.
Yeah, and I think part of it is recognizing where we think part of it is need-based.
Sure.
You know, what are the highest priorities from a need base? And then also, what's more practical? Where can we be more impactful? And some of those things that are low priority are either, maybe we can't be that impactful with it, right?
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and no, we really didn't put timelines out there, but again, this is a living document. And as we get this person on board and we're able to provide some more results, then we can look at those things.
Gotcha. Okay.
The timeframes are pretty wide, like
Fluid.
years.
Yeah.
So 0, 2, 3, 5, that kind of thing.
And they match the C2C plan timeframes. So
Okay.
continuity between the two.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All the plans.
I know we've talked about the position a lot, but I don't want to give the impression also that that, I think Leanne maybe mentioned this, that the others responsible are going to step back. That's really not what we're gonna do. That this position is going to be an enabling position. It's gonna help us move forward faster. Still basically have the same level of commitment from the current working group members.
But the ability to focus.
Correct.
It will be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was kind of the person who pushed that we needed a working group because I got on the board and said, look, we've got this assessment. Is this just gonna sit on the shelf? What are we gonna do with it? So we kind of went through it and said, here are the county employees who seem to, you know, touch this issue one way or another. And I really, and it's really an interesting group because there's something happened like the last one, we started talking about some issue and I was surprised at who chimed in on it and who had knowledge about that and had interest and concern about that issue. But I think particularly like so many other things, the last year and a half it's been difficult, you know, with the pandemic, with all those things to really come back and focus. But I was convinced even before then, and I wasn't at first convinced that we needed a position. But I became convinced when I saw that, you know, we meet, we'll do things, we'll have commitments and good intentions, but then life happens. The real, you know, and I think having the position will help us in terms of having somebody who can really move projects forward and will also keep us involved as the people, you know, and we put it in the job description that this coordinator takes her or his direction from the working group. And that's going to be the tie back to this plan and to this assessment and to the assessment we're going to get done on the headwaters and the one we already have on the Ioway. I mean, we'll have 3 good-sized watershed assessments that we need to be putting together. So that's going to be an interesting one with the new consultant, how they pull together this, our county-wide one with what they're doing for the headwaters once we're done on the Ioway. So, and the question is, what is cattle still doing in the creek?
What's that?
The question, your question slide.
Oh,
Never mind. I see them every day.
I'm really excited about the new position starting, and I think it speaks volumes for what our priorities are. We invest in the things that we say are important, and we provide for the resources to do the work that needs to happen.
Look forward to presenting, he or she presenting to us in the future.
It'll be interesting seeing what we can get done in a year.
Yeah.
Get moving and get done.
very good.
Thanks.
Thank
for
you.
all of your work.
Thank you.
The whole group.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have discussion and direction on the mission statement, branding and implementation.
This item won't take much time, I don't believe. So, geez, like 2 years ago, I think, we started developing a mission statement for Story County mission, vision, and value statements. Last year, in early 2020, those were presented to the board at that point. We had a plan. Things kind of changed rapidly shortly thereafter, and really the opportunity for staff to find time to work with Ames Economic Development Group at that point. They were actually like working on different designs with staff, kind of fell apart. I mean, everyone understands what happened last year. Then we kind of regrouped later this fall, or last fall, able to get back and look at some different designs, went back to drawing board countless different times, as the board is well aware. So we kind of got to the point where we were coming up with designs, but not really sure for what purpose. What are we going to be using it for? So that's why I'm here today, just for some direction from the board, what you envision, ultimately how we would really deploy whatever words we use, the vision and the value statement and the mission statement. I did put in there that like human resources has been using it in some ways, but hasn't fully implemented it through performance evaluation system. We've had other departments and offices, have the values up on their walls or entryways. We've been incorporating into county news and the Department of Recognitions over the past year, picking a value for each department and office. So we've been slowly evolving it. It's gone to the annual report, last our story, but we don't have a image for it. We don't have a clear direction what we're going to use it. Does that make sense? But, so really the main question, do you want the staff, whatever comes up, do you want it staff driven? Do you want it outsourced? Do you want staff to start looking at the possibility of what that may be? It's another key thing. It's actually in our recruitment video. It's a really neat part of it. How the staff shares that, what the mission statement is. And so that's been part of the slow emergence and evolution of how we've gotten out there. But if we use on letterheads, if we do specific videos for the mission and put it up here somewhere and a big art piece, whatever it will be. So are there questions? I'm sure there are, but.
If I recall, I think some of the questions previously were kind of looking at what would that logo, I guess, kind of look like. And that's where I think we kept having several presentations of what we'd like to like. And, it looks bigger in the bigger model, but then when you're doing smaller on like a letterhead, some things that were presented, you can't read, you can't see it and that's where you're looking at consistency from whatever format. That became the challenge.
And there were fantastic ideas. One is, take the county's logo and the green arm, I'm not sure what they are, add the values in there. Well, the board has an adopted policy that logo cannot be modified. So that's part of the other discussion. If that's a direction to go, that's part of the game plan we need to put in place and work towards accomplishing, so we make sure we're following all the policy implications.
Well, I've been meaning to talk to you about this for quite a while, because I have some very definite feelings. And I don't think we start with a logo and branding. I think we've got a mission that we got some people who are really excited about doing the mission in a room and worked with a consultant and came up with a statement. I don't know what we've done yet to have ownership of that within various departments. I think very little. I don't think branding and a logo and putting it on the letterhead helps people own a mission. Some people will do it on their own because of the kind of people that we're. I think we saw an example of how one department has already internalized and done some I would call it local work. And not everybody will do that, but I would like to see a totally different approach. And I would like to figure out how we start with at a department level and go to people and say, this is a mission statement that volunteers came up with. We don't expect you to own it right now at this point if you weren't a part of that, but we want you to be part of that. So what we want to do is have some small group discussion to just talk about what does this mean to your department? How does this relate to your job? What is it that you do? What values are important as you do this work? How does the mission statement speak to you? What is, and get it localized and personalized to the employees. And I don't think we've done that at all.
Yeah, I think you're right on. And I think the question is, how are we living our mission statement?
Right.
Exactly.
Right, because we have it out there, but if we aren't uniformly living that, it's just words on paper.
But it's not training people in the mission, in our mission statement. I see that phrase sometimes and that kind of drives me crazy. You don't train people in the mission statement. You don't sit you down and say, this is what our mission is and this is what it means. Do you got it? That is not it. It's got to be from employees? What does it mean to you? What's important about your job? How does what's important about your job, how is it reflected here? And unless we do that, it's just gonna be a nice logo or some words on a letterhead.
We want that buy-in.
Yes.
That's what we want.
And maybe that revolves more around us, elected officials, department heads, making it a point of sharing with our teams, this is what I'm doing as I live our mission statement. This is how I internalize our mission statement. And just continuing to present ourselves as examples of why this is important to us. And then when we see somebody doing something, or we hear about someone doing something that we feel like exemplifies living our mission or working our mission, that we then recognize them, not necessarily a public, big public thing, but making sure that we're watching for those things from our team members, from our county employees.
Right. But I do think that's where you need to have the conversation, because I don't want kind of what I feel or how I have internalized or looked at our mission or how it relates to me to kind of override how you.
Sure, right.
How you feel or whatever. So you want to make sure that there is that conversation, that recognition.
Yeah,
And I think that's right. That's where Linda's getting back to, that personalized health impactful to them.
I think we need to develop a process that utilizes employees or respected employees of the county and who could get together as a group and possibly be trained to go out and do some meetings in all of the departments and personalize it that way. I agree, we can lead, we can do things. I don't see us as the leaders necessarily of this process. I see a core group of employees. And think about how that would happen. I'm kind of struggling with it. Alyssa and I talked just a little bit the other day because we just ended up talking about the mission. And I'm not crazy about a consultant coming in and talking directly to employees. What I would like to see is a consultant who would train a group of employees in how to do this process of working with our other employees on the mission.
What
Yeah,
would
that
the
makes sense to me.
consultant do?
Train a group of, my thought is we get a small group of employees, kind of cross-discipline. And the consultant would kind of train them on doing sessions with employees on how to personalize the vision within those departments. I don't think a consultant coming in and talking at employees is the way to do
I
this.
agree. I agree. I don't know that I guess I don't think we need a consultant to do any of that.
Maybe we don't.
I don't know.
Maybe we don't. We need somebody to head it up.
Whether you're having a consultant or not, but you're gonna have to have somebody who has kind of that broader picture direction to work with that small group. And okay, if you're gonna go out, what are they gonna go out and kind of discuss or facilitate, and how to go about that? Does that kind of help you, Leanne? Kind of.
Leaving you with a few more questions than you sat down with.
Well, and I think it gets to why we haven't come up with that image that speaks to everyone, because we all have felt that, one, it does mean something different. I mean, it's gonna mean something different for me from being here at Story County more than to review. I mean, you just about as long, I mean, it may, but then it's gonna also mean something different to that employee the first day they start and read it. And I think how we personalize that, I saw it one way because of my history here. Linda saw it one way because of history as a resident of Story County for her lifetime. I mean, it's how we
Our
have internally,
experiences.
yeah, experiences.
And believe me, we probably have employees who don't care,
And,
and it doesn't speak to
Yeah.
right now. I mean, just honestly.
so, yeah, today is just, it's under the other reports on purpose so that we could have this discussion, really, so I had some guidance. I'm having other individuals ask me, hey, can I put a poster up and stuff, and where's the branding element? Where are we going? I thank you for those same questions. At least I have a way to have some feedback today and move a little bit forward and maybe come back officially with an agenda item or some additional ideas.
Well, let me ask a question. Who is going to be in charge of continuing the mission work? Who's doing that right now?
So right now, one of your next items is the communications plan. And under one of the strategies is finalize mission statement, engage employees.
Okay.
So, that falls under really the board of supervisors as adopting this plan. That's up for you all to. This part up to here has, I know Alyssa was involved, Deb was involved. Sandra, I think when she came on board was involved. It's been really a kind of a team effort.
So the answer is, to my question?
I think it's kind of been used so far. So the question, does it remain with Leanne as or her department as that communications outreach?
Alyssa, can we have your thoughts? Because I know you've been
Yeah,
thinking
in
about
regards to
this.
training, it's really hard. I mean, we can incorporate the mission in onboarding to get that first initial, this is Story County's mission. But it's like you guys have talked, it's different for everybody. They have different work in the county. So how are you personally gonna live out this mission? It is a personalized thing that a lot of times comes from the department or office level. So I really think once we get that out there, I mean, it's really how is each department and office gonna live that out and really get that out to their employees. I mean, we can do some training. I mean, we had it scheduled to say, okay, now we have a mission statement, what's next? What are our next steps? How do we get it out there? How do you own it as an employee of Story County? How do you live it out? Different things like that. I think we can train on the broad pieces of what does it mean to have a mission and how do employees look at it, but actually to train on the actual mission of Story County is very difficult because we have so many different departments and offices. So I really think it is something that we have community services already doing it. They're having those discussions with their employees, focusing on it. We can do a broad overview of what are our core values, but those core values they mean something different to each department and office based on how they serve the citizens of Story County. That's my perspective. So I don't know how, I think it is a collective push out. I don't think it's one person. I don't know, Leanne, if that makes sense.
I think maybe it's something that we need to have this conversation at the next department head meeting and.
I almost think that it would be more meaningful for employees if each department had its own mission statement. and that they were not inconsistent, and that they, I think what we have as a county is more values, and the mission statements be consistent with our values, because I'm looking at secondary roads and community services, there's just two. Missions are widely different. I mean, the only thing they have in common is they serve people, you know, as government employees, they serve people who live within this county, but they do wildly different things. You know, and that's why I would almost, you know, and I'm kind of going far afield here. I would almost develop a process that had each department, you know, we had values maybe, had each department develop its own mission consistent with those values and serving the residents of Story County. What specifically do you do in secondary roads? What specifically do you do in the auditor's office? Those things are totally different, you know? And I think if we have one mission for Story County and everybody's, you know, this is your mission, people are gonna say, that doesn't speak to me. It doesn't speak to me being out in January in the cold, plowing the road in front of Linda's house. It doesn't speak to doing the various things.
I think our mission statement was developed based on that, so it can be, I mean, it is pretty,
Yeah.
it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
But I think you can take that
Exactly.
mission statement and how do you live out that mission within your department or office? So
Right.
I don't think it has to be, the mission statement doesn't have to be different for each office.
I think we already
But how are
have
you
a
gonna
couple
live it out?
departments
Right,
that have
right,
their
right,
own
yeah.
mission statement,
Yeah,
if you want to know. Conservation has its own mission statement,
so does the sheriff's office.
so does the sheriff's
county
office.
attorney's
And I don't think that's bad.
Which
Animal
Animal
control, information technology has one, planning and development used to have one. So that's the, sorry Lisa, you're really big on the screen right there.
That's all right. So that's our mission as a county government as a whole. But I think if you look at the individual departments or offices' missions, do they go astray of that? Providing quality opportunities and services, or can
Can they expound or elaborate upon, so you've got that as kind of.
you've got the broad one, now how are you
overarching,
gonna do it as a department or office?
That's right, that's almost values, honestly.
I don't have our value statements
Yeah,
on here, but,
okay.
so
I think there's a reason that some of those departments have their own mission statements. I think it's because they were forward-looking and did that, and they did that reflecting the work they do. And I think they probably, I just have the sense that that's not a bad statement as an overall mission statement, but I honestly think that we will have better buy-in and better use of mission statements because our departments are so different, if each one of them is allowed and encouraged to develop their own mission statement. I think it will fit better into budgeting, fit better into various other just planning.
I would question when you brought in a consultant to help facilitate with different departments around the table to come up with this, whether it would make sense to have each have their, I mean, obviously they do have a separate one, but is there somehow that it connects to
The
our overarching one?
I mean, that's what I typically, I know typically you see one mission statement for the agency or the piece.
Sure.
But then each department and office may have our goal, our specific mission, keeping this in mind, is to do this, this, and this, but it still
Right.
goes back to the overarching,
We're more general.
Yeah.
Certain departments become more specific.
and we never had a Story County mission. That's why other
Right.
departments and offices have their own. There was, the full agent,
Right.
government body never had that, and that was this whole process. Maybe individual departments and offices will go back and relook at their mission. To see how their individual one fits into the big picture. I don't know.
So you were part of the group that developed the mission statement. Really, it kind of, that group was really a fantastic group, put in 4 or 5 meetings to develop, maybe more. The mission statement, working with Ted, can't think of his last name. Yeah, Garnett. Maybe, and we developed it, or they developed it, and it was presented to the board, COVID hit. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring that group back together, kind of full circle, to bounce some ideas past that group, because it really was a representative group of Story County government. And just see what some of the, I mean, there were some great ideas for implementation that were coming from that, but it was just kind of, hold up, let's get it adopted first. Let's get that major milestone accomplished and celebrate that. And so maybe that's the next step. That
Can you remind me of the people who were on that, not the person, but what departments they represented?
I think we had from
Almost
everyone, yeah.
I mean, I remember attending
Yeah.
those meetings.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of the last meeting of the squad room, going around the room. I think we had,
I recall that, I mean, I think there was pretty much.
Just somebody from secondary roads?
Yeah.
There was.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Conservation was there, I remember
Yep.
sheriff's office was there.
we were very strategic to do that when that committee was put together, or group, I'm not sure, working group, whatever it was called. So I mean, that could be a path forward to revisit that and.
So, I think that's a good idea to bring everybody back that was on that and just say, okay, where do we go from now? What have you, so you've taken this back to your departments, what have the discussions been within your own department and office?
That will be really
There.
interesting.
Yeah.
Sandra,
Yes.
do you want to move up here and?
She's got it all. Good. I think there is.
Yeah, Stacy just put in the names, Bree, Van Sickle, Stephanie Jones, Joby Brogdon, Alyssa, Joel, Arns with IT, Stacy, Sedania Sequist with Treasurer's Office. Ted was part of that too, Cassandra.
Nancy from
Yeah,
the
Nancy.
Conservation Board,
Nancy,
Nancy, all board members.
I thought Connie Torsdal was
Yep,
there too.
Connie was there.
Thanks, Stacy. That's a good reminder. So, you know, I think it's good to ask people what they've done. Also, however, realize we didn't ask people
No.
to do anything
Right,
specific. We didn't give them a formula of what the next steps were. But if people had done something within their departments, they could talk about that, and then we could talk about, you know, how do we go forward and make sure that all departments do some work, and what guidance do we want to give, what help do we want to give on that?
I'm just curious to know what Sandra's thinking.
I'll swap her spots.
Or bring up another chair,
Yeah.
or just bring up another chair.
Go ahead.
Honestly, I don't have any specific thoughts. I like the idea of either bringing the group back together or having a conversation at the department head elected official meeting, or having a conversation with departments to get their feedback on how they're living the mission, or how they believe they can with the mission, and how the values fit into their job and so forth.
Have you heard anything from any of the departments that you work with as far as?
Just community services as to what they're doing, not specifically from any of the other departments. Animal control, as I mentioned, recently revised their mission statement. New director, new mission statement, new focus.
So it'd be nice to see all the mission statements that do exist with departments in the county, because I just run across them occasionally every now and then, like I run across that Conservation's annual report, that, oh, they have a mission statement. I didn't know that had I not seen that. It would be good to get them all together and see how they fit or don't fit or are different than what we have as a department or a Story County government-wide mission statement. Could somebody do that? Just ask all the department heads, do you have a current mission statement? If so, when was it adopted? Leanne, could you follow up on that, or would somebody else want to do that?
I can
Just,
try
you know.
to.
Hmm?
I can do that.
Anything else that you need at this time? No?
What would you like to see happening right now? What would you like to walk out of the room with? Because I feel like you don't have it.
I think, let me get the mission statements of those offices and departments that have them developed and bring those back, just share them with the board, not necessarily in a formal, and let me just do some informal polling of the past members that worked on that to see if they have time to meet again. I really, last year took a toll on people and maybe they're behind or what, or just trying to figure out how to work together again.
Sure.
And if they'd be willing to meet and then bring that back through Sander to the board. That's a good one.
Could we say if the general consensus is, yeah, we would like to get back together, can we just say now, do that, like make that happen, set that up? Or
Probably
does it
still have
need
the
to-
email group set up, but I'd have to change a few names, but.
I mean, would it need to come back through us for us to say, great, let's do that, and then 2 weeks from then, or a month from then, we have a meeting?
Okay, yeah, walking out of here, I'd love to hear that. That Leanne just, if you want that to rest with me still though, that's, I mean, that was a question Linda raised as well. I mean, that's how you want to go forward. Or if you think it's more appropriate somewhere else, or with someone else.
I mean, I'm kind of fine with you moving forward with that. Yeah, I mean, if everybody's willing to get together, then get together. I don't see a need to bring it back to the board. You just do hey, at the board meeting, we've got it set up. This is when we're going to be meeting. Any other thoughts from anybody? Linda?
Do you want board members involved or not?
They could be, I mean, the last ones, I think, well, I know I attended, I know Loris attended, I thought you attended some of those meetings as well. Not all of them, I mean.
At different times, but I thought, didn't you come through too? I know.
Yeah, and I know I
attended a
came
couple.
I know I came to some too, it just always depended on what the time was and whether we had another conflict was our thing. But I think pretty much your meetings always had at least one supervisor was there.
And I think that you were there, even though you weren't a board member at the time, you were.
Right. I mean, do you want a board member?
Well, I have some very strong feelings about mission statements, as you can probably tell. And I just don't want to have a mission statement that doesn't involve and engage people. And I think processes are what's important to get people involved. And I think it's probably more than one representative from a department. One person from a department does not mean that department is bought in or that we've helped them in a process figure out what their mission statement is about.
But I think if we're able to get the majority back together and talk about the direction that we're going to go as a group, as a whole, then each of those departments can strategize how they're going to sell it to their particular department or group of employees, because
Or, and
Or we
resources
brought back to
need.
that group to say what they're going to do or some suggested ideas.
What resources they might need then
Right.
to be able to help. sell it or engage employees to keep the silos broken down.
Right. Okay. Do you have enough? Any other questions?
Not now. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we'll move on, and it's, you're just staying up here for the
Yeah,
next two.
I'm gonna
Leanne.
suggest we skip the next one till next week.
Okay,
To prioritization.
okay.
Have Bryce come join me for the 2021 communications plan. And- Yeah, that's why don't we do that?
So I compiled,
Just share it, wait a second. Sorry.
Excuse me, was Lisa Markley?
Yeah, I emailed her and told her that we weren't.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure she wasn't waiting and thinking.
Yeah, no, I emailed her and Wayne
Okay.
and said that
Okay.
I was going to just delay it. Okay.
okay, so I kind of put together a presentation the past couple days with different insights and analytics based off of our social media performance within the past month. So this, I just listed why Story County needs a social media presence, strengthen relationships between county government and county citizens, promotes county government in a positive, efficient manner, easy access to information and material, and promotes unity and understanding across all departments and offices.
Sorry, I'll try and keep up.
Okay, so this, Facebook is the only social media platform that offers actual ways for you to track how it's doing. Our Instagram and Twitter do not. But so right now, we're at 2,152 page likes and 2,786 follows. Right now we're up on all areas, so our reach, so the people that we're reaching is up 30% in the past since May 31st. So this beginning of June, we've had a lot of, and then our engagement is actually up 71%. So the amount of people that are actually clicking on what we're sharing, reading what we're sharing, link clicks. So yeah, so end of 2021, I kind of want to see us reach at least 2,500 likes and 2,900 follows. So I want to reach a minimum of 1,000 people each time we post, with a minimum of 100 engagement. That might take a little bit to get to that point, but if we keep building the following interactions, we can be able to get there. Just how continuous posting of relevant, timely information and faces and voices, and not just information getting thrown at people.
Lost my little arrows. I have to do this one. Oh, there we go.
So as you can, this is just the actual graph that shows our reach has been kind of at a constant, May 12th through June 7th. Where you see spikes is going to be where it was actual pictures instead of information. The lower ones are going to be when we share like the Board of Supervisors agenda, information like that. The adoptable pet of the week usually has a high engagement, and then faces. So, and then this is our engagement. So the top chart is going to show our last 5 posts. So if you can see the post with Margaret's retirement had an exceptional amount more of reach and engagement than our other social media posts, which just reiterates what I talked to each of you guys when I met with you about how incorporating faces and pictures rather than information, big chunks of information. And then the bottom chart shows what the peak times of when you're going to be most effective, when people are going to see your information. And that's between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. is when people are winding down after work and looking at their social media platforms. So then Instagram is a little bit more tough. It's new, it's a new account, but there's not a rate of range for me how we've been doing before I've been here. But since I started on May 18th, we started with 609 followers, and we're today, as of this morning, we're at our average likes is 4 likes per picture on Instagram, which I'd like to see again, which is how kind of we're going to interact with Iowa State students, which is going to be probably my main way to get stuff to Iowa State, and then sharing the information that we post on my own to get to students. So then I just have our goals of where we want to be for followers. We've gained quite a few. Over Memorial Day weekend, I came back and we had 8 new followers. So same thing, we have our weekly post, and then we're going to implement photo of the week, which is going to be a picture just somewhere around the county that'll go out and take pictures just to bring more of that in. But.
So on the Instagram account, I know that 1,000 followers by the end of the year seems kind of scary. A year ago this time, we had to switch accounts. And we did switch, and we started about a year ago this time, we're at like 30. So the growth has been exceptional.
But other than just the projects that we have.
Okay. Any questions on social media engagement?
No, I think those are great goals.
Okay. And I have to say, I appreciate Bryce having someone there to actually manage the social media. Check it, we try to check it 3 times a day, first thing in the morning, middle of the day, late at night. He mentioned that peak time, that's doable with some of the software or some of the programs we use. That we can access, actually I can access from my phone even, if something comes up to be able to post at that 7 o'clock hour. So that's been very beneficial.
And we can schedule things. So before we leave at 4, we can, through Hootsuite, we can schedule a time for it to go out. So if we want it to go out at 6 o'clock, we can schedule it to post at 6.
I just wanted to quickly update you, now that we kind of are waning down of the duties regarding the COOCOG management team coordination, I can get back more on the communication plan, and Bryce is on board. Some of the strategies and the action steps, because actually since you adopted this, there have been some changes too, so I just want to get some feedback. Just some things in addition to what's up there on the board that we'll talk about here in a second. We did have, we've already talked about the mission statement, it's in here, but we had in the communications plan that, I keep on saying annual report, the Our Story newsletter that you'll recall we would send out through the Sun. We did the board terminated that agreement with Gay House Media in March, February, March. So we are now set to look at a summer newsletter and release of a newsletter. How do we do that? Seeing if the board has any suggestions. I know, Lisa, you had some that you spoke with Bryce about, and I like this, taking the county and maybe in the quarter sections or whatever, and like targeting a specific part of the county with a mass mailing, and then using that to generate email addresses. The budgets for next fiscal year still includes the monies, I think, for the annual or our story. I'd have to check that. I think $7,000, $12,000.
It was originally 30, wasn't it?
No.
No, and we had it 4 times a year.
No, I think the highest it was maybe 18,000.
Okay.
We changed the format of the annual report so there were more pages at one time, so that the amount could be, I think maybe 12,000 was a high. I'd have to check.
Okay.
But just getting some feedback with that, if we look at direct mailings, again, today is not to make any decisions, just get some ideas out there. And Bryce has already met with you all as well as other elected officials and is working his way down the list. Linda, you mentioned the website when Barb was presenting too. I think we're actually at a point, we had to be pretty information heavy when COVID and the pandemic emerged to be able to, especially when we're closed, we can pull back on that information. That's our website, especially now that we have the 6851 that you can put in different extensions. What am I trying to say? The directory for the phone tree. Yeah, the phone tree. So all those numbers can be simplified and but the website design is part of the communications plan. And then Bryce put this up. Onboarding, that video is very dated, but also long and difficult to watch, and it needs revised, and that's part of the communications plan. That's one of the strategies Bryce will be working on, but also making it department and office specific too, giving those offices and departments an opportunity to share their messaging however they want to in whatever format then. Getting to know Story County segment, get to know Story County segments. We did this years ago when Paul Toot was here. He actually sat where Lisa's sitting and interviewed both Darren Moon and Michael Cox. Just tell me about you, tell me about what you do. And they actually may still be on our YouTube channel somewhere. It was just awesome. And had to change some of the approaches. I think we could go back and revisit that as an option. And then the quadrant meetings are actually in the communications plan, but maybe this is a chance we have to revisit those, look at scheduling those, how they, maybe going back to how they originally were set up to be. We kind of lost focus, and definitely keep those in the off election year cycles. So they
What
are
was the purpose of the quadrant meetings?
to get get Story County out where people are. We don't, not allowed, unless something is personally affecting someone, like a rezoning or something, people generally aren't following county government. So going where they are. So an opportunity to have that dialogue with citizens, city leaders, school district officials, township trustees, but in their communities, in their space, and bring up different issues that are impactful to them.
Like a town hall or?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the way Story County was set up, we had to make them by quadrants, just to be able to get out there. And we had them springtime and fall, lessons learned, avoid harvest, avoid planting, which we did not succeed at the first year with harvest. So, those are some things that we really are gonna be focusing on, we being Bryce, over his time here in the summer and then on into the school year. But I'm excited. Today will be the first day that I think Latifa, you're doing the after meeting review, video review. We'll get that online and get that shared. Just a way to engage people to follow Story County, get involved, everything that goes with that.
I don't think we actually talked about who was doing it. Do you want to do it first since you're chair?
I really don't care who does it first. Man, fine, since you will be voting in next week, or Linda wants to start it, would you go ahead and do it?
I just picked you because my phone was almost dead, and so I think we're gonna have to use your phone. Are there any questions on any other suggestion items? We put the communication plan, I mean, you've all seen it, you've reviewed it when it was adopted. Through your discussions with Bryce, anything else that we've missed?
No, just one thing, your memo that's online is attached as a communication plan, but there is no
I think I
attachment.
forgot to,
Yeah, so just maybe adding that.
Yeah.
So. No, but I think we got a good start. I mean, kind of a good plan to start with, and see what materializes and grows.
I'd like to have more discussion about the quadrant meetings, exactly what the purpose is. It turned out, I mean, I just got in on them in the last year, and I wasn't too impressed with what they had ended up being.
I think key to that is if we maintain off election years too.
Yeah.
With all respect, I mean,
So it doesn't seem campaigny.
Sure, that was one of the problems. But the other problem was it really wasn't getting information from folks out in the community. It was just, here's what the county's doing, here's what the county's doing, here's what the county's doing, thanks for coming.
and that was not the original intention.
And that was quite off-putting to me. And there were a couple places where we didn't have many people. I think I showed up in Huxley as a resident, there was nobody there other than about 6 or 7 county employees It had been drug out at night for a meeting that didn't happen. So I think we need some more.
Yeah.
We're gonna reinstitute those who really need some thought as to how we make them two-way and interactive and useful to people.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea to get out there. But yeah, set it up so it's more them, people talking to us instead of us sitting and talking at people
And that's-
yet again.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, one of our first ones, we didn't even have an agenda, and we didn't take meeting notes. Then they were, we had to start taking meeting notes because all three members of the board were showing up. I have some lessons learned on
Good.
what not to do.
That'd be an interesting session to have.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. All right, upcoming agenda items. No. Public forum number 2, comments from the public on items not on the agenda. The board may not take action on comments due to the requirements of the open meetings law, but may do so in the future. I'll open the public forum. If there's anyone who'd like to make comments, please either unmute yourself or raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone. Nope. All right, so we'll close public forum number 2. We have liaison assignments, committee meeting updates, and announcements from supervisors. I think the one announcement, I mean, we can talk about other groups, but I don't think it's posted yet, is we were looking at having a work session on June 22nd from 2 to 3:30. Is what we had talked, that was a date we kind of looked at or talked about of having one of our first work sessions with the American Rescue Dollars. Did that work with everyone's schedule?
It works with mine. I don't think I saw anything.
I don't know if Darla did.
No, because I think she had, last I saw was an email, she'd asked you to post with
Yeah.
those 2 attachments. And then I thought, well, gosh, things got a little confusing, and so that's why I thought I'd better double check with both supervisors to see if that date works still or not, the 22nd.
From 2 to 2:30.
We were looking at like 2 to, it might be just 2 to 3. I think we we're gonna say 2 to 3:30 or 2 to 3, or we could do it a little bit earlier. We got a board meeting that Tuesday, so it's like, we're just trying to get, just because you never know how long a board meeting might last, unless, you
It
know.
works for me. Just
Does that day work for you?
Yeah.
Does it work for you? Does it work if we change a time, or does it not work?
I've got a call for, I don't need to attend it. Like,
I don't want to start your time.
it'll just, that'll work. That'll work. Yeah, just want to make sure that we're.
Starting to have that discussion.
so that's 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
I can talk to you about how to do the attachment, if you want that whole thing attached to the agenda or just share with participants.
The two items was an agenda, and then I think it was the NACO information.
Do you want that attached to?
Yeah,
That was my
attach it to the agenda, or, yeah, just attach it to the agenda, or you're saying, or share it.
I might need some help.
Okay, well, if it's sharing it, that's fine too. That's fine.
We'll figure it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Anything else anyone wants to update?
Talking about the biggest things that I have, I guess, the Headwaters WMA is meeting Thursday at 9 o'clock in Story City, and we're going to have our consultant for the watershed assessment give us a presentation, and it will be the first in-person meeting for the WMA, so we're looking forward to that. There is an outdoor open house at the Tedesco Environmental Learning Center. I think, have people seen that? Oh, okay, I thought Michael would send it to you. There's that open house Thursday afternoon from, I think, 3 to 7. So I think I just know it because I've been told about it. I'm not sure if I've got anything on, but I'll look and see if I can send that to you. And YSS also has an open house Thursday evening, 4 to 6. And what else is going on? That might be about it. Do we have drainage district meetings tomorrow? And some other miscellaneous meetings. Those are the biggies.
Yeah, I see there's Ames annexation.
City Development Board
Yeah,
is at 1 o'clock. I think it's called Ames and Nevada annexations. I'm
Right.
looking at.
right.
So. Anything else you need to do on that?
Yeah, and I have like the AEDC exec committee on Friday. We've got our NACO stuff going on, a visitation to go to Thursday afternoon. That's what I have. All right. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Moved and seconded. Basil? Aye. Merkin? Aye. Hens? Aye. We are adjourned.